Hello, hello, hello. Today I'm talking with Gunther Verheyen. We talked about the challenges of a one-person company, about humanizing the workplace, and how having one foot in the team and one outside the team is actually a good thing. I'm Yves Hanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you like today's interview, don't forget to click it. Hello everyone, and hello with me I have Gunther. Gunther, is that how I should pronounce it in English? I think so. Just to double check.
Yeah, well, I think if you will have troubles pronouncing it in English because we're both from Belgium and we speak both Dutch, so you know how to speak this. In general, when people in English would say this, it's I always say to people, I'm fine with whatever I hear. If it sounds like my name, I'm fine. As you probably know, that people in English and even in the Netherlands, where they also speak Dutch, they have problems with the soft G, so they always say Gunther or Gunther or something like that. And as you know, we both live in the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium, where we say Gunther. Yeah, like you said. Yeah.
That's exactly why I'm asking, because I think with I prefer to these days to ask it on camera, because sometimes, yeah, even with a name that I know in another language or in another thing, that's always interesting. And I want to go also a little bit on showing on where we are, and actually it's already on Google Maps on where you are in Antwerp. And normally I start with myself, but let's now move to me. So I'm in Drongen, or with Ghent, so not that far away. I actually work this day in Berchem, so I came from Antwerp, rather close to you today. And on my side, it's a couple of minutes, 5-6 minutes before 8 o'clock in the evening. What's the time on your side?
Yeah, same time.
Exactly
Because
the same
we
time,
live
because
in the
we're in
same time zone, the same country, even and not that far away from each other. Yeah. Because
exactly well.
it must be funny for you because in general you work with people from around the world, different time zones, maybe plus several hours, minus several hours. I don't know what you run into, but yeah, we're
I've,
so
I've,
close to
do-
each other.
I've done interviews with people in Australia where it's also the same time, but then 12-hour difference. It's like that person just got up and I go to bed afterwards, or vice versa. It's always interesting. Um, it's indeed in the beginning I tried to avoid to invite too many people from Belgium. It was like, yeah, but I want to connect with people around the world. And at the same time, I realized, like in the last, I don't know, 6 months, like, but that actually means I'm not inviting people that I actually know much better, which is also a little bit interesting. But Gunther, for the few people that don't know you, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, let me try to stick it to sort of whatever you'd call professional thing, because this is your series called "Who is Agile?" So in the sense of agile, let me first say my full name so that people know
Mm-hmm.
how we speak, how we say it in Belgium. So my full name is Gunther Verheyen, which is
Mm-hmm.
not easy to pronounce for other people. And along the road somewhere, so I started with. This thing called Scrum, although I didn't actually start with Scrum, I started with extreme programming long time
Mm-hmm.
ago, and that was in 2003. So we're now 2024, so it's in the fall of this year, it will be 20 years of Scrum, starting with XP, extreme programming. And somewhere along the road, I started calling myself an independent Scrum caretaker. And it's something that I still say today. That was in 2016, by the way. So that's how I love to introduce myself. I'm Gunther Verheyen, and I like to call myself an independent Scrum caretaker.
And what does that mean for you, caretaker of Scrum?
Well, it means two things, and that sort of expresses also in a way, or shows my belief in Scrum and where I feel we should, in what direction we should take Scrum. So in 2016, I stopped my exclusive work for Ken Schwaber and Scrum the Talk because in 2013 I had given up my position as whatever they would call some sort of principal consultant at a large international consulting company. I gave up that and I started working with Ken and Scrum the Talk. And in 2016, I stopped that exclusive work for them and with them. And I decided to sort of stand on my own 2 feet. And I was just a one-person company because when I left in 2013 Capgemini, that large consulting company, I started up my own little company in Belgium, my one-person company. For 3 years, I used that as a vehicle to work exclusively with Ken and Scrum the Talk. So I decided to keep working from that vehicle, let's say, so not look for employment or go into service again. And even more, I decided to at 2016 to, for at least by that, for the time being, that's 8 years further, so it's still a long time being, I decided to not be part of any sort of fixed structure, small, big, whatever. I decided to try to stand on my own 2 feet. So and you probably also have that sort of one-person company, Eve. So I had to think about a title for myself because LinkedIn and you have to make up things and so on, and I have to think about a title. And I was really thinking about I don't know how you see that, but I see like on LinkedIn, I see people calling themselves the CEO of their company, and then it's a one-person company, and
We all go through that phase, or we think about it, and then we think like, do I like it or not? And
it feels awkward. And I felt like, why would I call myself the
exactly.
CEO? I'm just a one-person company. I'm really very
Mhm.
smallest possible enterprise because I also do I'm also this sort of old school do-it-yourself guy. So I do a lot of things myself. I do my administration. I've got no secretaries working for me, so I do all the stuff myself. So and by that time, I felt like, what if I would call myself how I would like people to see me, or what I try to be, or what I hope to be, or what I aspire to be. And then sometimes intuition helps a lot. And then just at some point, in my memory at least, just this idea of caretaker popped up in my mind. And I felt, wow, this resonates with me to start with, calling myself a Scrum caretaker, because I hope that caretaker means that I don't just care for Scrum, because I'm a Scrum caretaker. I have this deep sort of belief in Scrum, let's say, Scrum as a tool for lots of things. But I hope that the term caretaker in itself also reflects the idea that it's all about people, human beings, so taking care. So Scrum caretaker for me personally means trying to take care of Scrum, and also radiate that it's in the end all about people. So taking care of things, and taking care of people, not just Scrum. So Scrum, but certainly the people aspect of Scrum. Because I don't know how much time you have, Yves, but
Take
one of the
time.
things that I've seen in all of my years of Scrum, let's say, is that gradually, step by step, and I think you've been around like from the early 2000s too, I
Yeah,
guess.
exactly.
So you've seen lots of things too. And what I've seen in sort of the growing adoption and use of Scrum, and literally around the world. So as the advantage of working at Scrum the Talk and with Ken, that you have sort of view on literally the world, is that gradually, let's say, the process, the iterative incremental process of Scrum, working in sprints and shots, whatever, that has been adopted by organizations, but they miss the other point of Scrum, meaning self-organizing people. So in
Mhm.
that sense, what I call as sort of the two main underlying, let's say, management principles of Scrum, and I started calling that Scrum's DNA, because it's that dual string thing. So the underlying management principle of Scrum is for me empiricism, so empirical process control, inspection, adaptation, let's say, but also self-organization, because Scrum as a framework to tackle complex work, uncertain work, highly unpredictable work, and so on, creative work, and so on. What you need is those two aspects: iterative, incremental way of working, regularly stopping, reflecting, and so on. but also self-organizing teams, because if you can't predict things, you need collective intelligence. And what I've noticed in my over 20 years of Scrum is that gradually the process of Scrum, that inspection adaptation or that empirical process of Scrum, that has been adopted, but I miss the people aspect of Scrum. So you've got the process aspect of Scrum and the people aspect of Scrum, and we're out of balance. There's way too much focus on the process aspect of Scrum and not enough on the people aspect of Scrum. And we need to restore the balance. And I
Yep,
think
I
a lot
recognize
has,
that a lot.
yeah, and a lot I think has to do with the fact that sort of the um, underlying mindset of organizations and often leadership, but even people and teams in organizations, the underlying mindset is still that industrial thinking, thinking of people in terms of resources and utilization and being busy and so on. And that leads us, and then from that mindset, obviously people will look at process and they think that process will solve it all. But it's not, it's actually the people within the process. And then even that took us so many years for that sort of iterative incremental way of processing things to sort of um, take root silently, gradually. So that was already really difficult, but it seems the people aspect is even a lot more difficult. Using those short cycles in a way to sort of set people free and know that your risks are being mitigated by the fact that you work in short cycles, that there is no longer a need to breathe down people's neck all day long and to judge them for estimates and tasks and who has done this and who has done, and have you lived up to things. So and just by selecting that word caretaker for me reflects, at least I hope it radiates for me, that in the end it's all about people. And the biggest challenge is to keep focusing on a proper use of the process of Scrum, because it's still way too much used for implementing on predicted requirements and so on. It's not about discovery exploration again. So we have a lot to do, let's say, in sort of the process direction of Scrum, but we even have a lot more work to do in the people aspect of Scrum. And that is what I call sort of the warm aspect of Scrum. Process, in a way, is for me cold. That's easy, that's described, it's just working sprints, and we got those instructions. But that hot topic, that warm topic of people, that seems to be so incredibly difficult for organizations. And that is, I think, the future of Scrum. And then so I started calling myself a Scrum caretaker in 2016. And then afterwards, I added independent to that, because people typically associate me still, obviously, having worked with Ken and Scrum to Talk and being a trainer with a license of Scrum to Talk. People obviously typically relate me to Scrum to Talk a lot, but I still wanted to be able to say and for people to see that I speak independently. That was part of my decision in 2016 to not be part of any fixed structure, to speak independently my thoughts over Scrum, regardless whether the Scrum Alliance likes it or not, or Scrum to Talk likes it or not, or other organizations or whatever, or communities. So I added independent to that, to make sure that, you know what, my viewpoints on Scrum and what we should do with Scrum, what we have done with Scrum, are independent of any organization that promotes Scrum or organizes trainings or has exams or certificates or whatever in Scrum. So that was
But
in
you still train
2017.
for
Yeah, I
uh,
still have my license as a professional Scrum trainer for Scrum to Talk. Yeah,
but 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 I think, well, I remember you talking about humanizing the workplace and things like that. So I definitely think that the personal aspect and that is something that, well, I know you care a lot about. That's at least how I know you. So that's
yeah.
definitely something that
But it's
is
glad
not
that you bring it up,
surprising.
because so I started calling myself Scrum taker, caretaker. Then I added independent to that, and several years later, I know it's maybe because of age. I don't know if you've been around in this agile world for a really long time, and I have a certain age by now. And it's funny how you sort of discover things throughout the years. The
Mhm.
way I talk about Scrum, I should
Inspect
have a
and
little.
adapt
Yeah,
in a way.
and you grow and you evolve and you develop. So at some point of time, I added to independent Scrum caretaker indeed what you said. I said I like to call myself an independent Scrum caretaker on a journey of humanizing the workplace with Scrum,
Mhm.
because I believe that Scrum it should have its focus on self-organization and how it impacts other people within the organization. I believe that Scrum is not just a tool to build better products and more satisfying products and so on, and even deliver them faster, but it can really be a tool to re energize people, to create a workplace, a workspace where people like to come to work again, where we help people figure out, is this what I want to do? Do you like to do that? Do you like to work with other people? And if not, I'm fine with helping people find out. Now, it's not what I like to do. And that is fine. That is beautiful to help people discover, no, this is not what I like. I would like to go work somewhere else. So humanizing the workplace is for me really important. And it also has to do with this over focus, that in our world, this over focus on productivity and I don't know, whatever they call it, efficiency or effectiveness and so on, all fine, but it's still focused a lot in that idea about volume, producing more faster, being busy, utilization. And that is sort of a language, a way of thinking that applies on machines and manufacturing things and robots, but not on human beings. And one of the things that bothers me the most in this worldwide enormous adoption of Scrum, that there is not enough focus on the people and self-organizing. In that sense, that massive adoption of Scrum around the world has not led to more humane workplaces. It hasn't re-energized, it hasn't revitalized people. And that is in my mind impossible, because I remember certainly from my early days of Scrum combined with XP, largely 2003 until 2006, 2007, I've really seen people live up and re-energize and re-engaged. And I feel that what a lot of people, too many people miss, that if we foster an environment where people can engage, and then within the boundaries of Scrum and so on, that's all important, but it's only boundaries. If people really engage within those boundaries, interact with each other, collaborate, that is why I said in a book I wrote about Scrum, that Scrum is more about behavior than it is about process. The process creates a framework. It's how people behave within that framework, how they interact, how they collaborate, how they solve problems, how they not solve things, and so on. That determines what you get out of Scrum. And by all this imposing that organizations do upon people, we don't liberate them, we don't free them. And that undermines the productivity the most. So we've got all those organizations focused on productivity, results, performance, whatever you want to call it. But we should focus on different aspects, engaging people, re-energizing people. And as a result, but it's almost like a side effect, a byproduct. As a result, productivity will go up, because people that truly engage, truly believe in what they do, that buy into what the company wants, and that know about their consumers and the customers, and that like to collaborate with other people and teams within an organization, and focus on creating happy customers, let's say. People that have that, you don't have to tell them to be productive and do this and do that. So as a side effect, I am sure that productivity will go sky high, but it's only by not focusing on productivity. And that's something that is still often missed, I believe. So long story short, independent Scrum caretaker, humanizing the workplace with Scrum, because I think that should be a really important focus of Scrum practitioners, whether they are Scrum Masters or not. I don't care. people involved in Scrum should focus a lot more on that people aspect, because that is ultimately, that's sort of the devious thing, ultimately the way to increase productivity.
In a way that that reminds me about that dangerous title of one of the Scrum books, "The
Yeah,
Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time." If you understand the concept, it can work, but so many people read only the title and then think
yeah,
it's about efficiency and about, yeah, but there is so much more into that. And I
yeah.
think titles like that don't help in a way.
Yeah,
Um,
on the other hand, it's like you say yourself. I'm totally with you on this. But like you say, if you really want to understand how to do twice the work in half the time, read the book, and that
mhm,
is very, very. It describes incredibly unconventional ways to achieve that. So
mhm.
if you really want to know, so and yeah, it's an enticing title. It's tempting. I know it's selling. It's promoting. I don't have a lot of troubles with the title, because I actually also believe that it's actually true. It is
Mhm.
possible to do twice the work in half the time. And whether you call that twice the work or twice the value, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, but I'm stating it mostly because I've seen people thinking that they understand it just by reading the title, and that's of course
yeah,
always dangerous. And I see so many people looking for what is it, the minimal versions or the condensed versions of that book, and yeah, then
yeah,
it doesn't work. Anyway, we're not here to discuss that book, but thanks already because that's one nice introduction and showing a lot of the multiple aspects of you from where you came to also the iterations that you made on your tagline, but also on the way you think about the work. So that is really, yeah, for me, a nice way of looking at that. So let's move to that very first question. What is something that people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in who you are?
I think if I look back at sort of my my complete life, actually, this is something that people don't know about me. It's in that sense strange. Can I sort of first take a sidestep, Eve? Um,
Yeah.
my wife and I, we have three kids. The oldest one is turning 23, and so of a certain age, let's say. She's gone through some things. Now we don't have a lot of relatives. We don't have parents. There's not. I only have one brother. My wife has no sisters or brothers. So in that sense, it has led us to think of the world in terms of our real family. And I remember a long time ago, really before the age of blogging and so on, I remember a long time ago, somewhere in the 2000s, I regularly sent out sort of emails with things that we had gone through as a family, and personal things as well as professional things and so on. And later on, I turned that into a blog in 2009. So in that sense, the world is my family. And I think if the world would read my blog and follow things, they already know a lot about me, and probably way more than is may be healthy, because that is sort of like we have our little family, and then next to that, not a lot of layers around us. It's immediately to the world. So there's not a lot of things that the world should know about me, I think. Um, One thing that has formed me that much is actually, as I grow older and older and older, and I regularly talk about this with my wife, is sort of raising kids. Oh my God, what a challenge is that! Just raising kids in the world, if you really want to do it consciously and aware of things, and you want to form them, you want to shape them, you don't want to tell them what to do, you want to help them discover what they like and so on. If you really want to do it as a sort of really conscious parent, oh my God, that is so difficult. And in our case, and that's something that it's on my blog. It's probably slightly more complicated, because our oldest two boys are men in the meantime, because the oldest one is 22, the other one is 20, and then we still have a girl of 14. Our oldest two boys have a disability. The oldest one has a progressive muscular thing called Duchenne. So it's progressive, meaning it gets worse and worse and worse over time. And the second one has Down syndrome, um, and in a way, it's not supposed that, but sometimes, just sometimes, it is a gift. It's not good for them. Obviously, everybody hopes that you would never have kids with disabilities, but sometimes it helps you go deeper and it gets you a very different perspective on life and what might happen in life. So raising kids, but certainly raising kids with disability without a lot of network around us, having to do all things by ourselves, is incredibly difficult, but also sometimes a sort of a blessing, because I feel it sometimes keeps you with your feet on the ground. Although I believe that is also, we're both from Belgium, Eve, right? So I believe that's also a sort of Belgian trait, to keep our feet on the ground, not always stick our head up, whatever. That's another thing. But that has helped me. Sometimes I think, what sort of, let's say, career in a almost traditional way would I have had if there hadn't been kids with disabilities that we had to look after? And then I think, only for that, it's probably good that my kids are there and they are who they are, because it kept me sort of, I don't know, feet on the ground. Not a traditional career, because of that, I can't do that. I can't spend so much time on work. So it's finding an incredibly difficult balance. And in some ways, it is helpful.
Yeah, I can see that. It's well, our kids always show us the world in a way that we never think about that.
Mhm.
I can definitely think. Well, yeah, I have three children. Oldest, yeah, at the oldest at university. The second one, just starting this year, higher education, um, and yeah, it's I can also sometimes think, oh, I could have had a completely different life. Not that I would wish them away. I love
Mhm.
them all three of them, but I can definitely think, oh, I could have been happy in a completely different version of my life without children. Um, but I would not. Yeah, at this point, I'm really like, yeah, they also bring so much other stuff. All the, like you say, all the challenges make you really think, like, yeah, I'm more than just this person at work. I'm a human being. Well, I can imagine that the humanizing work and your focus on bringing that to life and into companies has also has been inspired one way or another with the challenges that you have at home. Or am I now reading stuff into this?
No, no, it probably has. I think it goes way back further, even in time, but that certainly has been a very important aspect. Yeah, absolutely. So this people aspect, human beings, also diversity and openness for different perspectives. That's been really, really, really helpful. Yeah,
I
and that,
think
that
so
really has
too.
formed me into who I am. Yeah.
Well, I can definitely think that you've been, I don't know always, but yeah, you've been open about your sons and how the life has been, or at least I remember reading and talking about it with you, or reading from you and talking about it. So that's definitely something you've been open, and I do think it might indeed help with. Well, okay, we want transparency in teams. We want to. Well, I also sometimes say, well, today at I don't know if it's at the daily or at somewhere else, like I had a shitty day, I didn't sleep well or whatever, I can bring it and that makes me much more human and that might learn something
Yeah.
about the
And
things.
it's also a way of sort of living example of sort of the atmosphere you would want to have in the team, because if you do that and I would do that and then other people would pick up on that, it creates a so much more healthy environment. And one of the things is, so I my wife and I, we've always decided to just be open about it anyhow, because you know what, the situation itself gives us already so much stress and tensions
Oh
that
yeah, if you would need to
not
hide
not
that it would
and not speaking about it would just increase the stress levels even more. So we decided
Yeah.
let's just let's throw it out there, not hide it away. And it even goes further, not just raising kids with disabilities, but just in general. And I think you have that too, that openness. You know, um, at every event where I get invited to go to speak and then I hang around and I talk to people, I always have people coming up to me saying, "Oh, Gunther, I so much appreciate your openness about your struggles and so on, and not just your personal things, but also professional struggles, like things like the impact of the world situation and classes not filling and so on, and just being open about it. And I get so much positive feedback on that I feel like, why is this so perceived as exceptional? That means we have way too many people out there that want to keep up appearances and put on a mask and keep up a facade of, and this sort of, I don't know, and I know that we're totally in line here with each other, but this sort of false sense of courage. I have to be brave and I can't. No, no, no. Vulnerability. That is the way to go. That creates sort of that humanized aspect of things. Yeah.
And the
So
real
not just
connection,
that
I would
openness. Huh?
and the real connection, like you say, people then come up to you and probably tell other kind of stories, and that
Yep.
creates a more human connection than any kind of things. And that's in that sense, it's didn't just influence you, but I guess it also influenced a lot of other people with who you worked and inspired in a way.
But what you just described, that situation, you say at a daily or whatever, sharing those things. I know that at some point of time, I really went through a sort of lesson in that regards. I even remember the year it was, I think 2005. So I'd been doing Scrum combined with Extreme Programming for 2 years with largely the same team. Sometimes had additional people and so on, but sort of the core team was exactly the same. And I really vividly remember in 2005 feeling not part of the team, because one of the beautiful things in those early years that we had, we weren't focused on roles or accountability, whatever call it. So in that sense, we were just one big team, and that means
Mhm.
I was sometimes probably internally called Scrum Master most of the time, although to the outside world I was seen as a project manager, because remember 2005 people had no idea what Scrum was, so we didn't call it Scrum, whatever, we just did it. And the outside world, the external world, looked at me as some sort of project manager. But on the inside, I was mostly Scrum Master. Probably regularly went into product owner stuff also. So we weren't focused on those accountabilities and that sort of those roles. Those things were being handled in a way. And I remember in 2005 feeling really, really, really deeply unhappy by seeing the rest of the team enjoying doing great stuff, working with each other. Because, like from XP, we did pair programming, we did all the beautiful practices, whatever. I saw them having fun, and I felt like I'm not, I don't feel part of it. So they
Mm.
do this, and I'm not invited, and I was really struggling. And I remember, Eve, I sort of accumulated those sort of negative thoughts in my mind for several months, until the day came that I just, at a retrospective probably, that I just threw it out. Guys, I need to get this off my chest. I don't feel, I see you all guys enjoying this, being happy. I think I've been doing a lot to help you make do that. Sometimes I'm sort of this bridge or this barrier between you and the sort of evil outside world and so on. And I was really, actually, really, really unhappy. And they were like looking at me, surprised. Oh my God, Gunther, no, why do you do that? No, we love you. We like what you do. We appreciate what you do. You do this for us and whatever. And really cool. No, no. And then, in a way, that sort of that throwing it out was really helpful. So since then, so that this thing, take it to the team, has been really crucial, even as Scrum Master, Project Man, whatever you call yourself. When in doubt, take it to the team. They can help you. They will help you. They might be outspoken. They might be. That was a really important lesson for me. So take it to the team. It was really helpful. Now on a
Even
side
the
note,
personal things, because indeed, most of the time when we talk about taking to the team, it's problems with whatever programming or whatever. And you say, well, I had a problem with my feeling around the team or being accepted in the team. and you
Yeah.
just took it to the team. I really like that. It's a
And
great
then another
example.
lesson I get from that, so take it to doing really important. So I often still say that to people. Yeah, but you're in doubt, just throw it out. Ask for help. Ask, take it to the team. Don't worry, they will help you. And another lesson I had from that, combined with think, like I said, there's only things you learn from looking back, and if there's
Hmm.
enough time, so looking back at those first years, not not having that focus on sort of the accountabilities. Yeah, but you're the scrum master, or you're the that, or in XP we call it the proxy customer in the beginning, and by not focusing on that, but helping each other out, and still people having a really clear focus. Um, cross collaborating across those accountabilities was really helpful, and it was also helpful in that situation to take it to the team. And then I've learned it's probably a sort of natural position that I should be comfortable with. That in a way you have one foot in the team and one foot outside of the team, because by having that foot outside of the team, that is also really helpful for them, because I'm sort of a bridge. Sometimes in a negative way I can be a barrier, I can keep out things, but I can also use that sort of bridge, one foot in, one foot out, as a bridge to connect people and so on. So in that sense, that was also important for me to understand, because by that time we started calling ourselves the Scrum names, let's say. That as a Scrum Master, having one foot in the team and one foot outside of the team should actually be a natural position. It is a good thing. That's something that I've learned. It's helpful, and for me, it also largely goes for a product owner, strongly being connected with the team, but also having one foot outside of the team. But in my case, and I know you've done a lot of coaching too, it really helps to coach people that you have a bit of a distance, so you're really deeply connected, but at the same time, you're at a sort of a small distance
Hmm.
also, so that you can bring in some sort of neutral perspective, and that's balancing, because that I'm the scrum freak, Eve, because I always think about this, because at some point in time in Scrum, Ken and Jeff added this idea of a Scrum team, and within the Scrum team, Scrum Master, Product Owner, and by then development team, and now called developers, whatever, because it was certainly in the US, there was a lot of protest against the idea that, yeah, but you can't say as a Scrum Master that you're not part of the team. Everybody should be part of the team. And I'm like, yeah, but you know what? I'm part of the team, but at the same time also a little bit not. I have one foot in the team and one foot outside of the team, and that is actually good and really helpful. So, but that brings us again to this thing, Scrum instructions, that people read it like very black and white and don't understand really like the spirit or the philosophy behind it and so on. But having one foot in the team, one foot outside the team was another lesson next to taking it to the team.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's always a little bit a challenge. I literally took on so this year I'm working as an engineering manager on purpose, not a coaching role, and finding that balance where you're completely now outside the team. And I'm like, but I still understand all these things, and I still
Yeah,
understand the same way I understood it before. But yeah, I'm now part of the evil part or whatever that people want to see
yeah,
it, and less trusted than I'm used to happen. And it doesn't help if I would say, but you can still trust me, because that doesn't help. That's what
no,
all managers used to say, or always say. So I really, it's harder for me, but at the same time, I find it so, yeah, interesting to learn again from that perspective, because I like to switch roles many times. So
yeah,
far, I'm really happy with the role. So I don't know how long I will do it, but I can definitely see it myself doing for a long time. But I learn so much from, again, trying to be in this position, with all the knowledge that, of course, I haven't forgotten, but to understand again more the complete outside the team, because that is whatever I want, it's really outside the team, even if I understand many of their things.
yeah,
And I still understand that balancing thing. It's really like there is value in all these kind of things. And like you say, sometimes be as a scrum master or coach, being a little bit in and a little bit out, that's something I've been, yeah, all of us have been playing at some point,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah, that's
I
great.
really
I
like
like
that.
how you talked about trust, because I agree. I think that's sort of the part of what I would call humility. You have to be a little bit humble. In that sense, I totally agree. I like to say also, you can't make people trust you. I cannot make people trust me. End of
Exactly.
discussion. The only thing I can do, and that's humility, is I can try to show that I am trustworthy.
Mhm.
And that might be an invitation, and people might see that I can be trusted, but that's all I can do. I can't make people trust me. I can try to show that I am trustworthy in my behavior. And the other thing,
And
if yeah, go ahead.
what I wanted to add is and trust the people, because at the same time, I think it's like if I would say you can trust me, but I don't trust you, that doesn't help.
Yeah,
And I've seen it so easy that even if I do trust the people in the team, yeah, sometimes in whatever role we push back a little bit. And I've learned this year, for example, the way I used to push back as a coach was completely accepted and felt trustworthy. If I do the exact same thing or even less pushy and less, but people is like, oh, why don't you trust us? I do trust, but I want to challenge you a little bit. And I found that really, yeah, that's interesting, because for me it's like you say, you have to be trustworthy and you have to trust the people, because I do think,
yeah,
I'm a strong believer in giving trust much more than in earning trust. It's like
yeah,
I want to give trust to people, and of course in doses. I won't like, yeah, the example I like to give is I trust my partner a lot, but I don't trust her to do brain surgery on me. Why? Because okay, she's not
yeah,
been trained in that and that kind of stuff. I'm not that stupid, but still, I would trust her in almost everything else in life, I would say. So
yeah.
I think that
Cool.
is, there is always that context, I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
But I interrupted you. You wanted to add something there.
no. It's cool. It's fine. I like a lot of things that you say. We totally align on that. And the other thing is that you said I've picked up this role as an engineering manager, um, and I wrote about this a long time ago. I think in 2014 already. That I say for me, whether you call it Scrum Master or not, but the idea behind the Scrum Master is something that I believe every manager should have or be.
Mm.
In your case, you're an engineering manager, but your attitude, your stance, I believe, should that be of a Scrum Master, facilitating, creating an environment, not judging people, trusting people, challenging people, pushing back. That's all part of the game. So even as an engineering or whatever manager, I believe that Scrum Master is sort of a mold for what I believe should be the modern management style. Facilitating,
Right.
focusing on environment, fostering environment, making sure people can do their job. But that does include challenging and pushing back, because I liked how you said that, even as a coach, because it's one of the things that annoys me a lot. There's this misconception around self-organization in Scrum. A lot of
Mm.
people, including Scrum Masters or coaches, whatever, feel like, yeah, but you know what? It's a self-organizing system. I cannot do anything. No. The only thing you cannot do is top-down command and control, pushing back, challenging, asking questions, um, making jokes, whatever, inviting people to explain something. That is all part of the game. So there's too many people out there that think, yes, self-organization, that means I can't do anything. No. There is so much you can do, like you say.
Mhm.
And even as an engineering manager, it might be perceived differently by the team because you're not officially coached. But taking a stance, a coaching stance, even as an engineering manager, I believe will be, if and I know you agree, is what you need to do. I think that, I don't know how it is in your organization, but in most organizations, the difficulties is in the fact that this is not an accepted stance for somebody with the title of manager.
Oh, I agree. This is hard from both sides. It's hard for other managers that look like Eve. You have to be whatever that they
Yeah.
are calling. That is
You
then
have to be the
probably more
superhero, the one who knows it all, the whatever. Yeah.
a lot of that, and then from the team is like, yeah, but you're judging us, and like, okay, I might have to take sometimes hard decisions
Mhm.
about who fits, and there is always hard decisions, um, and but that doesn't mean that I don't trust the people, I don't trust the team. I literally, what I said is I first took a before I accepted that role. I was there for a couple of months to what we then called a technical coach. But for me, one of the reasons to do that was to also evaluate, is this a team that I personally think I can help out and bring to another level? If I would not have trusted the people who were there, I would not have accepted that job. It could have been the management, it could have been the team, it could be the environment, it could be many kind of reasons. And it could be that I think, hey, this is a wonderful organization, but I can't bring any value, so I don't trust myself in that situation. I, for whatever reason, I thought that whole situation was something where I thought I could bring value, and I do trust the people. That doesn't mean that I will never push back to either management or people. That's yeah, that is for me the interesting part. And the main reason I took that job is, like you say, I'm a strong believer that managers should be taking much more the coaching stand, or doing more situational leadership, and okay, finding out, and not being the fully command and control managers that used to exist. I think that's but that doesn't mean that is then easy. But I think most interesting things in life are never easy. It might be
No.
simple to think about it, but easy of doing something, that's a different kind of thing. And talking about being easy, um, for if you think about, well, you took these kind of roles. If you had not been doing what you've been doing now, what would you have become of you? If is there any idea was there a preconception when the young Gunther was there to something else you could have done, or something
No,
along the
and
way?
again, and some things you only learn after, sometimes in my case, certainly after many, many years. So a long time ago, 1992, I graduated as an engineer, an industrial engineer in electronics, a specialization hardware, by the way, hardware design.
Oh,
But I had
and what
already,
what just for my information, what does hardware design mean in 92? Because I think
oh, that
hardware is something different than
this,
today. What?
yeah, designing created printed circuit boards and designing schemes and
Hmm.
schedules and I don't know whatever ICs and op amps should be connected with transistors and I don't know filters, condensators and so on. And but I realized after I graduated as an industrial engineer, I had to go out to look for a job. Much to my surprise, people expected to be really technical because that was the common idea of an industrial engineer. And already by then, I had this, I learned afterwards for myself, I had this focus on people and working with people. And suddenly it felt like in all those organizations was expected that I could really do stuff. And I don't know how I got my grade as an industrial engineer because I'm not a really typical hardware or whatever engineer. And even during my studies, I'd been combining it with software engineering anyhow. And that sort of attracted a lot of that. Yeah, that was sort of really important for me, that combination at least. Um, and I ended up in a software engineering position somewhere. Learned a lot about myself. Learned that despite the good results of the software I was creating, that I was not a natural born software engineer or software developer. Uh, and I was always drawn towards working with people. So and at the same time, it seems looking back, I was also really, really ambitious. I was burning with ambition. I don't know why, where that came from, and so on. So, and then I worked at a small and medium enterprise, which in Belgium we would call a KMO, small medium
Mhm.
enterprise, where I was given the opportunity to sort of go beyond just technical work. I was doing assembler coding and so on. To go
Wow.
beyond that, to do a little bit of project coordination and some planning and so on, and start working also with suppliers of the companies. And I totally revived, and also the two managers. It was a really small company, like 7 or 8 people. And the two owners and managers saw me reviving that, so they allowed me to do focus on that more. And then after 3 years of doing that, I was so burning with ambition of I don't know, getting promoted or moving on or getting up the ladder. I don't know what it was that was driving me, and sort of um, I didn't end up in a burnout, but I was about to burn out myself. So I decided to totally quit the technical world, and I started. I took over a bookshop
Wow.
for
That's
3
something I
years.
totally didn't know.
Yeah, so in 1996, 4 years after graduating, I was sick. I was tired of the technical world. I was fed up with it. I felt I wasn't given the chances I needed. I wasn't given the chances I deserved, and whatever, young, I don't know, ambitious, whatever. So and by then my girlfriend, who's now my wife, by the way, and there was a vacancy to take over a bookshop in the place where we live. It was in northern of Belgium. It was for a chain. You will know them, Standard Boekhandel. You know them in Belgium.
Hmm.
So a chain of bookshops
Wow.
around Belgium or Flanders, and it was
And in
franchising.
1996, they were still rather big, I would say. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
before the dot-com boom, and they
yeah, yeah. And there was this
were
small
they
bookshop
already
in.
were they already playing with internet online? Because I know that
No,
it, it
by then, not at
no,
all, not
no,
at all.
no.
Even no, and it was even I bought myself a fax. Do you know an old fax that you plug into the telephone connection and so on? Amazing things. And so I took over a little bookshop that we had in a little place that's called Westwezel, where I grew up. Um, Unable to imagine that a bookshop in the place where I grew up would ever work, which also turned out true that it didn't work because I knew the people around there. But we were doing fine, so the bookshop, the chain, gave us the opportunity to move to another bookshop, and that
Wow.
was not too far from where you live. It was in Wetteren, near Ghent. So we moved houses to from almost from one day to the other. We took, my wife and I, my girlfriend by then, took really impulsive decisions. But I did a bookshop for 3 years. First in Brussels, then another place in Belgium, and then yet another place in Belgium. So we moved houses 3 years in a row, and we totally loved that. But it was just not viable. In that sense, it was, if we really wanted to have a decent income out of that, it meant sacrificing all of the rest of our life, no social life, working 6 days out of 7, no holidays, and so on. But if on the other side you wanted to have a social life, you would have to give up on income. And that was sort of a decision we weren't willing to take anymore. But for a really long time, just managing a bookshop was really a dream job. I loved it, working with books all day long, helping people find books and so on, working with publishing houses. So we did a lot more than a typical franchising bookkeeper would do, bookshop keeper would do, but it was really beautiful. And I still remember it wasn't until the day. So I stopped with the bookshop in 1999. I went to work for an ecom because by then the internet was rising in Belgium. I got myself an internet subscription. By then it was still via, dial-up connections via your telephone line and so on. It was crazy. So I went to work for the first ecom shop in Belgium, where I took up, in the end, ended up in a management position and became really unhappy. And it wasn't until I discovered around 2003, 2004, first XP and then combined with Scrum, that I felt like, oh my God, this is almost at the level of having a bookshop.
Mm.
And then gradually it actually became that sort of level. And even the past couple of years, I also said to my wife, even today, I wouldn't want to go back to the bookshop. I wouldn't want to give up the life that we now have to do a bookshop. But if that would have been a really viable, there would have been a viable way to do that. Who knows? I might still have a bookshop.
Hmm. And was there because now you're calling yourself again an independent, like you just said in the beginning.
Yeah.
Is there any overlap between these two? What is there
Yeah.
from being an independent? Because, well, when you had the bookshop, you were independent, but you were like in a franchising. But did you also have people working for you in the bookshop, or how was that?
No, no, no. And in 1997, we had just moved to the other place in Belgium, the second place, Wetteren. We got married. and my wife had just graduated by then. She joined me, so we've been doing it for with the two of us. Uh, because hiring somebody to work for us would mean giving up in a way on revenues or income, if you want.
Hmm.
So that was the choice we didn't want to make anymore. It was social life and financial things, and we really couldn't find a way to balance those things out. So that's in the end why in 1999 we stopped. So I never had people working for me, and but that independence thing, it's a good thing that you ask about, because it's probably one of, next to focusing on people and wanting to work with people, independence has been, I think, throughout my whole life and career, for whatever reason, really important. And it's sometimes it's connected to also taking the difficult road. Just before you said, taking the difficult road is the most rewarding one. If it doesn't kill you, then it's the most rewarding one. But it's also stressful and difficult. But it is the most rewarding one. And that sense of independence is always part of it. I'm 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 really very introvert. And sometimes really, most of the times really extremely. The only times I'm not introvert is when you put me on a stage to talk to a crowd about Scrum, or when you put me in front of a class or a workshop. For whatever reasons, another persona of Gunther pops up or whatever and takes the lead, whatever. But next to that, I'm really introvert. But it hasn't never stopped me to speak my mind to my managers, my bosses, whatever, no matter how difficult that was. So there's something, I don't know, it creates a lot of stress. But it goes back to what we talked about earlier. Not saying things gives me an enormous amount of stress too. And then overcoming myself and still speaking it out also gives me a lot of stress. But at least I know that I can look myself in the mirror and knowing that I did the right thing. I've said it. I've told people. Because I remember a long time ago in 2000, you talked about the econ bubble. So by that time, I was working for Proxys, so the first large Belgium econ player.
But
I
that
had
was
been,
hired by or bought at some point by Standard, right? I remember that they
it
was a
was first
connection.
by Club.
Oh, by Club, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, by Club. That's
and
I
that was,
mixed up these two. Yeah,
no,
right.
that was after I left in 2001. But I remember in 2000, so the ambitions of the company were amazing. They were huge, whatever. They wanted to become the sort of Belgium Amazon, and they wanted to go to Germany and France and not be a local player anymore. And by that, books and CDs, that was what we were doing. And I was sort of sort of back office and IT manager, also taking care of stock and how we treat stock and work with suppliers and so on, whatever complicated things. And I felt like feet on the ground, we are not ready to move there. We don't have our basic processes under control and so on. So I was continuously sort of opposing the two people that had started the company. And in 2000, the ecom bubble, as we're old enough to remember that, right, Eve? So the ecom bubble, it all bursted. It things so incredibly. So we had, I think, when I started working for that company, I was about sort of employee number 15 or so. We had grown to 20, 25 people, and in the end, 90 people. And in the ecom bubble situation, the two owners, managers, as together with the capital investment company that had spent a lot of money, decided that we have to go back to 40 people, meaning letting go of 50 people out of 90. And I
Oh.
was given the instruction, Gunther, here you have the Excel list of all the people that are working for you. Who do you want to keep? Who are you letting go? And if I was so upset, I was angry, I was
Mm.
whatever, sad, because amongst the people that in the end the owners decided to let go, they were like people that were part of the company before me. I became part of the company at sort of the end of the startup phase. Some people had been in the middle of that startup phase. I remember starting when we started in a little studio apartment in somewhere in the middle of Brussels, in Jette in Brussels, and then we moved to a big location in near Brussels in Vilvoorde. So there were people that were there. There was a pregnant girl or woman part of that, and I was so angry, upset. And I was even most upset about the CEO of the company. It was a former McKinsey consultant, um, always smiling, always poker face, always no emotions, whatever. And I remember at some evening late in the office, because there were times that I worked like 14 hours a day. And I remember having a talk with him, and I told him, you know what, not going to mention his name, you know what, I hate this situation. We're fighting people, we're letting go of people, not fair. We had these stupid ambitions. I've been telling you all the way that we're not, whatever. Um, and 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 I threw it in his face, and he told me, you know what, Gunther, I have to remain calm, I have to remain rational, I will keep my emotions for in the evenings for my wife. I will discuss this with my wife. And at that point, Eve, I consciously told myself, I will never do that. I will keep being emotional. I will make sure that I will always have this emotional thing. I will never go for the 100% rational thing. It's not human. It's not correct. It's not the right thing to do.
Mhm. Yeah, I recognize that. I mean, especially in these cases, of course, I do. I also know that when you have to let go a person, then doing the opposite and telling to that person, it's hard for me to let you go, it's also not
Yeah,
helping. That's a complete different kind of story. But yeah, like it is an emotional thing, and just saying
yeah,
like yeah. And of course, I understand that sometimes you have to do some things to save a company. I mean, that might be an important thing,
yeah,
but that doesn't mean that it's not emotional. I mean,
yeah.
there
And,
is
and you
definitely
can show your emotions. There's nothing wrong in showing emotions
exactly,
and showing that it's difficult and hard, whatever. Yeah. So those are
exactly.
a few lessons that I had. But was
But
it
I
in
really
two?
love I really love because you we talked, or the question is about yeah, if you had not been doing, and you're already talking multiple versions of you
Yeah,
that you actually have been doing and that you've learned, because like you say, right now you wouldn't be thinking about owning another bookshop for multiple kind of reasons, and at the same time you learned a lot about independence and like a lot of other stuff. So, and
yeah,
in a way that brought you back into the industry, I would say, because from a book club to an online book club, in a way, to
yeah,
a
yeah,
bookshop
absolutely.
swimming to an online bookshop
Because
to
when when
going
I
back.
when I decided when I decided to leave that e-com company, it was actually my wife that told me. So by then I had that was 2001. So I'd been graduated for 9 years, only 9 years before that, and worked at different companies in different things. So it was my wife that said, Gunther, please look for something that will keep you interested for more than 2 to 3 years, because that was sort of my span of attention in a way. 2 to 3 years, and then you get used to things and you get to know it. And it seems there's something in me that just sort of, yeah, puts me off. Then I don't know. And she said, and that's how I ended up being consulting, because I've been doing a big hardware infrastructure project for the ecom company, and then I started talking with people. So, but it was Unix systems and so on. It was Oracle was involved, so I started talking to those people of Oracle and Unix and so on, sort of testing out and asking and so on, inquiring about markets and so on. And then I think one of those told me, "Oh well, I think you would be great in probably you have to think about consulting." Now, honestly, Eve, in 2001, I was 31 years old. I interested engineer, went into a lot of things. I didn't even realize totally what IT development, whatever consulting actually even was. I came from this little farmer's place, whatever, in the up north in Belgium, had been doing stuff, but I was still so, in a way, probably good thing sometimes, naive about the world and how the world works and so on. So I so consulting. Okay, what does that mean actually? What do they do? And so I had to look that up, and that's how I ended up in consulting anyhow. And
It's
then
interesting that you say that, because I do remember that when I was in yeah, studying, I graduated a couple of years later than you in '94, and I remember that one teacher was talking against consultancy and against even so a couple of other things. And he pointed in a negative way to certain things. But of course, in the beginning, you look for a job. So I looked for it, and I ended up in something that was a small independent software supplier. And I remember that this teacher was also against that. And I realized I think in the first 2 months when I was there, that teacher had totally no idea what these kind of companies did, and he was basically evangelizing his class against these kind of things. And for him, it's like, if you ever want to do real interesting IT work, you have to work for a bank or an insurance company and the large kind of things. I was like, the more I think about it, the more I think like, no, there were much more interesting stuff going on in a whole lot of other stuff. And I see many people not understanding something, talking in a way about that.
But one of the sort of lessons that sort of my life has learned me, and it's difficult to get that across to other people. Sometimes I say to people, so also take your time. And for this, a lot of the things that I've achieved, I didn't plan for them. They just, I don't know, for whatever reasons, things happened. You went for it. You try to build on it. You try to capitalize on it. It's more like sometimes sensing opportunities, and I'm probably also only talking about the more successful ones. So it just feels like stumbling along, and then sometimes something works out, and then you become this, and then you get a chance to do that, and then I remember working for that small medium enterprise a long time ago in 1993 until 1996. That at some point of time, the two managers asked me, "So Gunther, where do you want to be in 5 years' time?" I was like, "Oh my God, I have no idea. I've never thought about it." And that has been sort of the rest of my stance also. I don't, how can I even know? I don't want to plan for that. I don't want to be ambitious for that. And because I noticed, not by then, but in the meantime, that the people that do plan for that often, I don't know, they might be sort of carried away by their ambition, and it might end up in like your elbow work and stepping over other people, and sometimes even stabbing people in the back and so on, just because they have some sort of career ambitions. And if there's one thing that I'm really happy about, Eve, that I can honestly look at myself and say, I have never done something like that. I've never stabbed anybody in the back. I've never built up something at the cost or the expense of somebody else. At least that is the difficult road, because that independence is truly the difficult road, but it's still, you know what, in the end, we can pay off our house, we can feed our family. My wife stopped working back in 2007, given the growing difficulties we had with our two boys by then. Never regretted it. Puts a lot of stress on us, but on the other side, the good thing is probably independence, and as long as we can keep up with that, that's fine.
That's really, really, and I think it's kind of also, you kind of say a little bit, and that's where I want to go with that next question. What is your biggest challenge, and why is it a good thing for you? Because you talked a little bit about, okay, independence gives you a lot of advantages, but there is probably also some challenges. What do you consider the biggest challenge, and at least the biggest challenge you want to share openly on the internet, of course?
Yeah, well, let's continue that line of thinking that we're working on. Probably, if I think about it now, because you shared the questions up front with me, I didn't have too much of a look at it. It's just so, okay, good questions, but I don't want to think about them up front because I will be preparing answers and I don't want to go there. So in our current line of thinking, probably one of the challenges is to keep that independence, but still have a viable business. And viable means being able to sustain my wife, our kids, our house, pay off the house, and whatever. Not have too many financial worries. So independence, but let's say in a viable way, and even probably professional chance increase my independence even more. Yeah, that is probably. So thank you for helping me think about this, by the way. Yeah.
And so, well, the next part of that question might make you think even more. Why is that a good thing for you, that challenge?
But because it allows me to speak freely. That is something that I like in my independence the most. I can speak freely. not bothered, not hindered by commercial things, selling things, salesy things, having to lie for things, having to, I don't know, present things as more positive than they potentially are, and so on. In that way, probably not having to lie or to cheat. And it probably has to do the way how I ended up in this sort of individual position, which is, by honestly, Eve, to be honest, also often a really lonely position. It's also really lonely. And there's a strange thing that people think, oh, Gunther, though, whatever, I don't care about. But some people say I have a sort of a fame or a name or whatever. I don't care about those things. But people think that because you have a sort of smallest whatever reputation somewhere, that it also means that your classes fill up easily, and oh, you've got a book out, and you're so well known and whatever. Yeah, it means nothing. It is worthless in the end. It's about trying to also get some money from this. So I remember by the end of last year, 2023, I wrote a blog, and again, I'm more open than I should be, saying, you know what, money is important because it pays our lives. So money is important, but still, it is not what drives me. I'm not driven by money, but I do need it. So a balance, independence, money. That sounds like a good conclusion. My biggest challenge, a balance between independence and income or money. In that sense, being independent enough to speak freely, to speak my mind, to speak honestly how I feel about things, um, without having to lie or cheat for commercial reasons.
And at the same time, being able to still live
Yeah.
in more or less the way you want to live. And I think some months might be better, or some years might be better than others.
Yep.
But that's a little bit, and I think that's the challenge for many independents. Like, okay, I want to go and yeah, and not worry, because what I'm hearing, you didn't say it, but what I'm hearing, and might be a good thing to check, is, for me, independent means also indeed I can say whatever I want, and I don't worry about the consequences if my current client might not like, because I'm openly showing a very transparent mirror about the situation. If they want to fire me for that, I'm fine with it, because I
Yeah.
prefer indeed to say it and to be very open and blunt about stuff, and not about how to get it, to be indecent, and to, still with respect, but still say it like
Yeah.
reality is. If then people don't like that and prefer to fire me for that, that's fine. I
Yeah.
mean, that is for me also part of being independent. Like,
Yeah.
I don't worry about that. But that also means you need, for me, I needed some kind of what I would call a financial safety net, because I
Mhm.
know that if I do that, I can, for an amount of months or even a year right now, I can be living without income and still have the same
Yeah.
kind of thing. I will
Yeah.
start worrying that moment that happens, but
Yeah.
still,
And if I
how
if
is
I
that
think
for you?
about it, sort of independence and money, one thing that is really, yeah, I really have to sort of add to the equation is obviously our home situation, because our oldest boy has Duchenne.
Hmm.
That means he can't stand, he can't sit, he can't walk, whatever. He's totally wheelchair dependent. But that means all the things that he needs to do, getting out of bed, dressing, washing, going to the restroom, whatever, preparing food and so on, he can't do that. So we have to do that. And as he is quite big in the meantime, so he's 22, it's physically too heavy for my wife. So that means I spend at least 2 to 3 hours every day doing those kinds of things. So that means I'm really very limited in the sort of assignments that I can do, because I can't do full-time assignments. I need to have some sort of freedom to organize my own time, which also has a positive side, because it means I go up to companies and they can only hire me as a consultant if I have that liberty. And that means I will only work with organizations that can give me that out of necessity, because it's needed, because I'm needed at home. But it's also a good thing, because it means I made that an explicit thing when I make offers of services for companies. I tell them that explicitly. I will not work for more than 1 or 2 days a week on average for you at your place. Big, in the background, obviously, it has to do with our home situation, but it's also think for me professionally a very healthy situation because I know myself. If I spend more time at an organization, I'm going to start taking over stuff. I'm going to start doing stuff that I should be helping them do for themselves. So it's a really healthy thing too. So because it will avoid, it will prevent me from taking over stuff. So in that sense,
Which is in the end also
trying to
good
turn
for
a
your.
disadvantage into an advantage also.
Yeah, and I think, well, it maybe is an easier sell because of your personal situation, but I do agree it's actually it has some advantages for the for your customers or your clients. Now, I want to move to that next question, and I think we already talked so many things about that, like what is driving, because I think right now, I think for the people that didn't know you before, it's becoming very clear that you're a very driven person, that you're value driven, a lot of other things. Do you know where that drive, where that passion is coming from?
Yes, I do. And it took me many, many, many years to realize that. So what drives me, I hope that is clear for everybody, it's people in the end. It's people. End of discussion. But also
Mhm.
that took me many years. And I remember the exact time when I became totally aware of that. It was 2007. So I'd been doing Scrum, delivering work with Scrum and XP for 4 years by then, and there was this one person that was working with me for less than a year, and he said, "You know what, Gunther? What I like about working with you is that you will never be happy unless everybody around you is happy. That means you want to have a
Mhm.
happy team, you want to have a satisfied team, you want to have an energized team, but you also want to have happy consumers, you want to have happy managers in the end, you want to make sure that the financial aspects of your work are under control, so that you have this sort of 360-degree things. And in a lot of those things, what is sort of most prevalent was actually people. That was when I realized, oh, what drives me is people. And in the end, what drives me still is people, and that's reflected, I believe, in that term Scrum caretaker, but also humanizing the workplace. In that sense, it is fighting toxic workplaces. It's fighting the toxic levels of too many workplaces and devious things that are happening that are making people unhappy and burning out people and making sure that people get stay at home for a long time with illness and so on. And it's in that sense, when I say humanizing the workplace, it's sort of fighting the mechanization of the workplace, that sort of mechanized view on the workplace. I've been thinking about it for a really long time because even when I started working, my first work, even as a software engineer, I was driven. When I worked for that small medium enterprise, I was driven. When I had those arguments with the CEO of the e-com company, and in the end, um, I left that company to go into consulting. Although by that time the investors had decided to remove the two initial founders of the company, and they wanted me to be part of the new, let's say, executive team. And in the end, I said no, I don't want to do that, and I love the company, but I still want to leave. So through all of those steps, I've learned that I can be a really annoying pain in the, what, for people I know, but it's always because I'm driven by sort of principles, values that are all about people. And it took me many, many, many years to realize that, or to 2007 and even later on, that it's all rooted in my youth. I haven't had a very typical traditional happy youth, not at all. I didn't realize it when I was in it, sort of highly dysfunctional family, certainly highly dysfunctional father that I had to live with for many years, all of my life actually, um, and that has been what's been driving me, realizing afterwards the unhealthy situation at home. And I think, Eve, I've never been to a psychologist or so, but I think psychologically that is what is driving me, making sure that things like that don't happen or are reduced or are increased or improved or whatever. Toxic situations like probably the youth and the family I was part of. But it took me many years and a lot of diving into my own and very painful introspections and so on. Why am I gossip? Why am I doing this? Why am I so driven? Why can't I keep my mouth shut? Why do I have to say about this anymore? And that's really the drive to humanize the workplace. In the end, um, I remember in 2012 I went to a agile coaching stance class, was it called like that? Yeah, from Lyssa Adkins. It was in Stockholm, in Sweden. And at the beginning, everybody in the group was sharing what drives them. And I told honestly, and I believe in that today. And I told somebody, it was a lady, I said, I want to create a world that is a better place for people to live and to work in. And she got like, much to my surprise, so really emotional about it. I said, "Oh my God, that's so beautiful." But I still believe in that. That is what drives me, making the world a better place to work in and to live in. And my tool to do that is actually Scrum, but Scrum from that I think balanced view, people and process and that combination. So
I
that's
really
what
like
drives
that.
me.
And so you said that that lady became emotional because she
Mhm.
didn't expect that, because she liked it so much. How
Yeah,
should
because
I
she
say?
felt, oh, this is so beautiful, and you're saying this here in front of the group, and she was really moved by it for some reason. Of okay, but it's really true. And then, but over the years, I've been discussing that a lot also with my wife, and even with our kids. Um, there are so few really engaged people for whatever reason. So not engaged, not trying to do more. What are you trying to bring to the world, rather than just spending your life going to work 9 to 5 and sitting the rest of your evenings behind the television? Yeah.
Yeah, I can recognize some of that, and definitely the well. You talked already a lot about humanizing the work, and indeed
Hmm.
making the world a better place, or the workplace a better place. But
Yeah.
now it's making it even larger as the world in a better place. So that's
Yeah.
a really
Yeah,
nice
but my
statement.
focus is obviously on the workplace because it's still a professional thing. Because I think we never discussed it, but I think you will agree that you called yourself also coach in your previous assignment or whatever. You're now an engineering manager, but still taking a lot
Mhm.
of um, looking at it as a coach. I think, um, but it's still a coach in a workplace in a professional environment. I've always said to people, I am not a personal coach. I'm not a life coach.
Right.
I'm here to help you out with your life on the work floor. That means allowing you to bring things from home to the workplace. That is not a problem at all. But I am not going to focus on them. I would love you to talk about it. I might ask questions. We can have conversations. But please, I am not a personal coach. I'm not a life coach. And I think
Uh,
a lot of coaching is derailing in that direction, and it's not a good thing. But
I fully agree. I've in the need to think 2007 I started 2 year therapy training, or 4 years, and my main reason that, and I understand it much better now than I did it then, but one of the
yeah,
main reasons for me was to understand the difference between what is therapy and what is coaching, and to also see like, okay, I can sometimes see like, okay, this is really some really personal issue where a person needs more therapy, maybe personal life coaching, whatever we want to call it. But I'm not paid. I mean, typically I'm paid by their boss in a way, and then it's like, okay, that is. I can want to help at some level, but I definitely don't want to go into that. I can then say, you know what, I can give you some links to people that I know who are really good at that, who are trained for that, but that's not what I'm going to do. Because it's yeah, there's actually a lot more reasons why I did that training, but that was for me one of the things that I've seen and I've used so much since then to really say at some point, like, sorry, but that's I feel it. I understand that this is something that's blocking you, but that goes away from that. It's much deeper, and you need professional help.
Yeah.
That is at a different kind of professional help than the professional help I'm giving.
Yeah.
That's a totally different thing,
Yeah.
and
That's why I
it's
call
so
it
tempting.
humanizing the workplace. It's my way, it's
Exactly.
sort of my focus of helping making the world a better place to work in and live
Mhm.
in by creating better workplaces or more humane workplaces. But I'm not about coaching people's personal lives. No.
Exactly, and yeah, and sometimes, well, especially when you have a good coaching relationship, at some point, some personal issues might pop up, and I
Yeah,
might
absolutely.
share a little bit, but very quickly I will say, wait a minute, because at this point of thing, like we can spend some time, you can radiate with me, but
Yeah.
this is not my thing, and
Yeah.
this is not where and I might see that it blocks you from doing or being happy in your job. That
Yeah.
I can also see, but
But
yeah, there might
that
be a reason.
already, yeah, but that already is a huge difference, no, Eve? Just
Exactly.
the openness you share, that you allow people to bring those emotions and so on. That's already so different than no, you have to leave that at home. You have to act professionally. You know, you have to act professionally as if you are not human beings, as if you don't have a personal
Mhm.
life. As you know, so that already. So what you share, it seems it is obvious to you, but it seems to be not obvious in a lot of workplaces.
Oh, that's yeah. I think on both sides, there's the fact that indeed, uh, literally, I've had people telling like, okay, you have to keep your personal life out and whatever. I
Yeah,
totally don't believe that. And the opposite, people thinking like, oh, but then you as a coach, you can do therapy. Like, no, or also thinking that both the yeah, why would I pay you for therapy? Well, you don't pay me for therapy. You pay me to create a better workplace and in many different kind of ways. And the people that come to me, the same thing. It's like, yeah, I want to, yeah, I can understand. Because there is a trusting relationship and you want to share some more things. And I can share some of my struggles in some of that. But still there is a boundary, as in I'm not trained for these kind of things. And yeah, this is something I feel that many coaches are struggling with. Yeah, yeah, I was
yeah,
I got my Scrum training, the Scrum Master training I got from Joseph Belrine, who is a psychologist. And yeah, I think every time we run into each other, there is at least one or two conversations about that, because we see people around us that doing that. I literally saw it at I'm not going to name the conference, but there is a conference I went to, together with my father. So my father is both the civil engineer, but then went into psychology and is a trained
yeah,
therapist.
cool.
And so when I started in agile doing training, we did a workshop together on leadership. But so yeah, we together joined a couple of conferences when we did workshops together. And yeah, while he was there, he still followed some trainings. And I do remember at one place where both of us we were in a session where basically it already was a strange feeling before. Like it feels like they're going too deep at which is good or healthy. But I do remember that person basically doing some kind of therapy, and I really already felt uncomfortable. A person I'm probably, because it's more than 10 years ago, I'm probably exaggerating a bit, but the way I remember is like it was a person sitting in the middle, opening up, getting very much therapy questions, the officially called coaching questions, but it was really diving deep into the personal life with the parents and whatever. So all things that
Yeah,
I think you shouldn't do, not as a
mhm,
non-trained person, and especially not at the conference level. um, and then the bell was up, and it's like, oh, it's the break. And basically that coach went up, yeah, I see you all at the bar, because it was the last session. Leaving that person in
mhm.
the middle, it was like almost what I call it zipped open, all emotions on the floor, completely
Yeah,
almost paralyzed, traumatized, and a person not realizing what he done, completely left to the bar.
yeah.
Where I remember my father going and talking with that person. And it's like, wow, okay, this is
It's not good.
insane.
Yeah, yeah,
It's not good, and that was for me the drop where I said I
yeah.
never want to do anything like that, not in a conference, not at anywhere level, because it's so,
Yeah.
yeah, never
So
do
those
that.
are for me two big observations on what coaching should not be. On the one side, people say no self-organization, I can't do anything,
Exactly.
and the other thing is that turning into almost like personal or life coaching and so on, making it too personal. It should still be about professional. It's about um, operating on the workplace in the first place. Yeah, cool. Yeah,
I agree there. So I want to go to that next question, and because we talked already about some challenges, some of the other things, what do you consider your biggest achievement so far? And maybe go, I want to go a little bit before, because this is basically your moment to brag and to shine. And I think you kind of already talked a little bit about it before. Is it easier for you, Gunther, to brag and to really be proud of your achievements? Is that
no,
an easy thing for you?
no, that is incredibly uncomfortable. Um, I once wrote a blog note about things that I had achieved. Um, and the title of the blog note was something like how I became something I never knew I wanted to be, or I
Wow.
didn't realize I wanted to be, because you just run into things and so on. And I think that was already when I still worked at Capgemini. And it was 2012, I believe. I had gone to that agile coaching stance class. I was working already a lot with Ken Schwaber by then. I was within Capgemini, regarded that something. There was things that were happening, and I was like, oh, I had no idea. So in the meantime, we have moved on like 11, 12 years again. So there's not one big achievement that I'm proud of. If there's something I'm proud of, is probably the lifeline, the timeline, the evolution. Still trying, struggling, not working out, trying something else, and so on. Maybe that's what I'm most proud of. If there's one thing that I'm personally proud of, is you said like your oldest son is going to university. That our oldest son, totally wheelchair dependent, is now in his last year at university. Today, he handed in his paper, his thesis, to achieve his master. So his university, a master in history. He's been studying history, which is so fun, so cool, so wow, so great. It's all about human science, right? Um, so if there's something that I'm proud of, together with my wife, I could never have done this alone, and my wife is an incredible, powerful person, is that, oh my God, despite all of the things, despite his wheelchair dependence, his disease, his problems, whatever, the many visits to the hospitals, whatever difficulties in getting public transport with a big power chair, and that non-inclusive attitude that you run into all the time, that he's now in his last year university at the normal tempo. He's done all the things, never had to switch, never had whatever, never had thing. The only advantage that he has is he gets a little bit more time to do his examinations, so his exams. That's the only thing he has. For the rest, he's doing it as a regular student, and that is, I
Wait,
think, that
because
is an
you
achievement.
said
It's his
before.
achievement, but we've helped him at least.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask. You said before that he's not able to do certain things like getting out of bed and some other stuff. Does that mean that one of you has to bring him to the university? Does he study from home? How does that work
No,
practically?
he goes
If
he
I
goes
can
to
ask.
university. So no, you can also, no problem. So he takes the tram, public transport
Mhm,
in Belgium, um, and there's been an evolution, because what we try to do, there's a what we call a park and ride, not too far from here. So we take him
mhm,
there by car. We have a specially adopted car. It was adapted for his to take his wheelchair with a
mhm.
lift and so on. So we take him there to the tram, the park and ride, where he put him on the tram, and then he goes off on his own. because getting out of the tram with this wheelchair is feasible. Certainly, where it has to be in the middle of Antwerp, then the platform is sort of the right size and the right height. Because trams in Belgium have this sort of bridge that you can pull out, um, and
And is that
um,
possible with all kind of trams, or does it, or
it's
there?
not possible on all kinds of trams, and it also depends a lot on whether the driver of the tram, how do you call it, the driver, is willing to help or not. And
Hmm.
honestly, most of them are not.
Wow.
Really.
So that
They
means,
should.
but wait.
It's in their internal rules that they should come out and help and so on. No, in the beginning, certainly the first year. So this is the fourth year of his time at university, and certainly the first year, we regularly had sort of arguments with the driver. Yeah, but he can't go on the tram by himself. There has to be an assistant and all kinds of things, or even his power chair. Oh, we can't go with this power chair on the tram because it's not fit for that. And we had all those discussions. It drains us because we are conflict avoiders in a way. We are not into that thing. And then we took we got in touch with the company itself, the organization, and they say no, that is wrong. It's in the rules. They should help. That an assistant is not needed, and whatever. All the things that those drivers were saying were not true. But it's so draining, Eve, to sort of
Mhm.
enforce that and get that done and so on. And it is suddenly, it's slowly, it's changing. But up to the level now, the line that he has to take from the tram into Antwerp, it's a very modern. So they have really modern vehicles, which he often can get up by himself and off by himself too. So, and what happens in the evening after his classes? One of his fellow students goes with him to the tram to make sure he gets on the tram and so on. So in the meantime, we found a way to work it out. But we've also noticed that within let's sort of the circles or environments of people with disabilities, he's so much of an exception. So many of those people are locked in into their houses, don't leave the house,
Mhm.
no ambitions and so on, or they end up in special education despite their cognitive abilities often, and they still end up in limited special education and so on. And that's something we've been able to avoid. Um,
And
and
it's, I
that is
think,
probably one
like
of
you
our
say,
biggest achievements in life. Yeah.
I think, well, we're living in a society that where you say technically it's possible, but the people have to support it. And like you say,
Yeah.
even the organization might support it, but then the drivers need to do that. And I can imagine if it's 4 years, more or less the same trajectory, that by now it's typical drivers kind of know, or other people taking that tram might
Yeah,
know.
still,
But
yeah,
still, it's I guess it's still hard, right? Because
yeah,
it's so many people are not used to and not
yeah.
really understanding that it's not because there is a physical disability that it means that there is a mental disability, and
No,
vice versa. It's like, yeah,
yeah.
that's.
That is a funny observation that our son has himself. So he's always in his wheelchair. He's sort of lower, and he sometimes says, you know what, when he's together with other students, and then people come up to them, and he says they talk to me as if I'm a child
Mm,
because he's in a
right.
wheelchair, and it's belittling, and it's like, oh no, and it's like it's so annoying. I'm doing the
I,
same at
I,
the
I
other.
can
Yeah.
I can imagine, because of, yeah, I've heard already some other kind of stories, and this is
Yeah,
but this is why I think it's important to still spread the message, because indeed,
yeah.
like you say, it's wonderful. Actually, well, my son is at university, but has the oldest one has already. Well, it's not a normal trajectory, in the sense that he had already some things that he has to do extra, or had to repass the next year, things like that,
Mhm.
because yeah, university is not easy. So
No.
if then a person with a physical disability is able to do the normal trajectory, that shows like, hey, there is a mental capacity that is really okay and good, and probably a lot of drive to actually show the world like, hey, I'm able, and I'm capable of doing these things. And then it's
Yeah.
very insulting if people talk to him
Yeah.
like he's a child. That's
But in our case, it's then combined with our second son who has Down syndrome, meaning he's got this sort of mental or cognitive disability. That makes it incredibly hard. But yeah, I think as a family, we've achieved a lot. Not easy, the difficult road, but yeah. So if that's an achievement, sort of the combination with having grown into sort of the professional whatever position that I have, the recognition that I get, the respect, but honestly, respect doesn't pay my bills. But again, sort
Mhm.
of the position I have together with what we do at home. Yeah,
I think that's yeah, and I think well, it both interacts and at the same
yeah,
time it makes things both easier and harder. I mean, being an independent allows you to organize your day in a different kind of way, but at the same time, you still need to sell it, and still need to well, the promises you make to your customers, you want to achieve them, and at the same time, you have all these challenges at home. So I can definitely see how that is a big achievement to get that, and yeah, in a way that is what we all aim for, like to put our children in the world as independent in whatever way that means, and it's completely different for you that for many other people, I would say. But still, it's a nice achievement that you can then see that hey, um, he isn't locked up in his world like so many others are. That's
yeah.
that's
And one of the keys for us, if I can even in a way, let's share that with the world in this way. One of the things that my wife and I said. So the strange thing is, our second son was born, and immediately after he was born, it was clear that he had Down syndrome. By then, his older brother, we didn't know about his disability yet. It wasn't officially diagnosed. That was only a few years later. Um, and as from the start, when our second son was born, and the doctor came to us and said, "Yeah, I think he has Down syndrome." We have to investigate that. One of the first things that my wife and I said, whatever happens, we're not going to make that disability the core, the center of our life. And that
Mhm.
was only reinforced when our oldest son was diagnosed with Duchenne. We made it even, and that has been crucial because we see that with a lot of people, their life starts revolving around the disability. And then, in that sense, the
Mhm.
focus goes totally to the disability. And we want to say we have two sons with a disability, but in that sense, not disabled sons.
Mhm.
There's a difference in that. They
Oh
are in
yeah.
the first place people with a disability, but not in that sense disabled people or
Yeah.
even word handicapped people. They're
My
just
my
people with a disability.
My partner works in the social sector, so she
Yeah,
works
I
with
know.
people who have autism, and this is a lot of things changed there in the last 30 years. About indeed, before we talked about handicapped people, then okay, disability, then people with disability. Now they're even talking. The word in Dutch is bewoners, so they really are
Mhm.
part of a living group. They don't even talk about the disability or anything because they all have different kind of challenges. Typically, per living group, it's similar kind of challenges, or the let's put it differently, the main challenge is the same one. Let's put it in the same working group, but they all have many other kind of challenges, and yeah, then people are just much more than that one core
Yeah,
aspect, and both the good and the bad things should be seen. And sometimes there are children or all young adults, I should call them, who have a lot of challenges, but still they could be very loving. They could be yeah a person that actually can radiate love in a way that many adults can't radiate it. I would
yeah,
say, and that
yeah.
that
But
is
the funny thing is also it can also be like our son with Down syndrome. In general, people the overall picture, oh yeah, happy people, love whatever. Well, I can assure you they are like very human too. They can be really grumpy and angry and whatever too. So don't limit
oh
them
yeah.
limit them to just those things that you seem to know. They
There
just
is well, like everybody of us, we all have rights on bad days or good days
yeah,
or whatever. We come out of bed in different ways in different days. I really like that you add that kind of personal touch there, and that actually kind of brings me to that next question. do you have a personal agility tip to share? Is there anything that you say, hey, this is something, yeah, I want to share?
Uh, the personal, I think, I hope, I think I can't really put really great words to it or greatly put words to it, but I think that from sharing a lot of things from my life, I think the agility was into um, adapting to what is happening, still searching, um, trying to sense opportunities and options and try out stuff and so on. That's sort of the sort of personal agility I think that we've been using. No long-term plans, no ambitions. Still, we are ambitious. We are ambitious, but not in the sense that in 10 years' time we want to have this. In no, but opportunities, sensing, working with people, discovering, uncovering, exploring things, trying to make the best out of things at all possible times. I
And
think I
that
think I remember a conversation with Ken Schwaber when I worked with him at Scrum the Talk, and and I think he was the one at some point said, you know what, agility, Gunther, also means getting the most out of what you have, what you are given within some constraints and boundaries and whatever. And I think that is something that we have been almost continuously been doing.
kind of reminds me also what I've seen in, and I don't want to downplay it, but what I've seen during the pandemic with Corona, that for me, many of the agile people were, and it's not like our lives were easier, but we somehow, many of us were easier to adapt to because we're so much used to thinking like, okay, this is a VUCA world, things are unexpectedly. What do
Mhm.
we know about the situation? We know that typically, for me, like for example, I thought the research tells me that pandemics take about 3 years. So, like almost in the first month, once we started to shut down, I was like, okay, this is going to take 3 years. So,
Okay.
and then I kind of adapted to a lot of the other kind of things. It's not that my life was any easier than other people, but I kind of adapted in a way, and that mindset made it easier. I'm
Okay.
not going to say that our life was easier. There were also challenges, but a lot of things. um, and for me, that's a little bit the example of what you were talking about. We take that situation, we look at what's reality, what's not, how could we adapt. And I saw so many other people who are then not from the agile world so angry about, yeah, but my life has changed and blah blah, this all kind of rules.
Yeah.
Okay, that's new reality, that's the context. Do I like the context? No. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
the same thing. Like if it's raining or if it's sunshine, I will do
Yeah.
different kind of things, but I won't be mad because it's raining, because that's reality, the context is there, and
Yeah.
yeah, I might adapt something. Is that
Yeah.
something you recognize also in the people
Absolutely,
around?
totally, totally. I think we had the same. Not the research and the timing horizon of 3 years. I wasn't there. But for the rest, yes, absolutely. Accepting that for the time being, this is what it is. Let's make the most out of it. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I recognize this, and it probably boils down to, if you're talking about personal agility, um, beyond all of the gray scales that we have in life. In the end, sometimes it's also black and white, and it has to do with what you say. Either if you're complaining about something, if you're really unhappy about something, your life at work, your boss, your whatever. For me, it's simple. Either you stay, you decide to stay, you make a conscious choice to stay, to not leave, but then you have to stop complaining. That means you're
Exactly.
accepting it is for what it is. Or if you really are unable to accept it, then please leave and go look for another place where you don't have to complain anymore. So sometimes I'm really black and white. But staying because of this, and in the meantime complaining and making your own life miserable and maybe the life of people around you, and so that is something that I can't get into my brain. And it's about, like what you said, in the pandemic, there were a lot of things happening that we couldn't even influence, have an impact on it, things that we couldn't change. Then you have to accept that. So If there's something you can change and you're not unhappy about it, try to change it. But sometimes that is not possible. And then sort of maximizing, optimizing what you have within those constraints. I think that is, yeah.
Yeah, I remember the when you said that about stop complaining. I remember one time the worst boss I ever worked with. At some point, I decided, like a couple of months in, I noticed everybody complaining. I still consider that the worst boss I ever worked with. But at some point, I decided I like my colleagues, I like my job, I like a lot of the things that I'm learning. I
Yeah.
don't have much interaction with that boss because, yeah, I can't explain the job I'm doing. Otherwise, it would be very clear what company or what boss that was. But
Mhm.
okay, for me, it was like I realized that actually in a coaching conversation with the coach, I mean, and then I decided, like, okay, do I want to stay? Yes, I want to stay for a lot of positive things. I will stop complaining. And whenever I was, like, I don't know, at the coffee break or whatever, and people were complaining about my boss, I just leave, or I would like say,
Yeah.
sorry, I don't want to be part of that. It's like, that doesn't mean I like the boss, but for every time, like even when he was asking me to do things I didn't want to do, either shouting or lying or whatever, or asking me to lie to customers, I said, no, I'm not going to do it. But at the same time, I stayed true to myself. But every time I said to myself, Eve, you decide you want to work for this person, and complaining will not help. And I was able, thanks to that, to stay for quite a while working for that person and still be happy in my job. And that is for me the thing.
Yeah.
Like, I would never go back to that situation now, but I'm really happy I worked there for the period I worked there because it was my conscious choice. But I
Yeah.
literally, like once a week, I need to tell myself, Eve,
Yeah.
it's your decision. You decide you work for
Yeah.
him. It's not him deciding
Yeah.
you.
And remember, you have to remember why you decided. So there's two aspects
Exactly.
really important. That part of what introspection. So really
Mhm.
go to that introspection, being really critical for yourself, and then a conscious decision, like you also called it. That is really important. But that already requires, it seems, a lot of strength or courage of people to really go through that critical introspection and then consciously decide, what am I going to do with this? Yeah.
Yeah, I think without having a coach at that time, I would not have been able to do that. That really helped to see that. But I remember going into that conversation with the idea. Well, basically, should I stay or should I go? That was kind of the question I
Mhm.
had,
Yeah.
and we worked through it, and I think probably a couple of conversations, and then I really decided no. I really want to do this, and like you say, I had to keep reminding myself about it. Um and and yeah, I still, a couple of years ago, my partner asked me, like, Eve, but weren't you more happy there? Like, I was happy with the job I was doing, but do remember that I wasn't happy with that boss.
Yeah.
But I also didn't want to complain to her. I just from time to time said, look, he's, yeah, I whatever words I used to describe this person, but that's not the person I like to work for. This is definitely teaching me a lot about leadership and and management that I never want to do, but that's also a good lesson.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's,
And it also raises the point that in a way what you're saying is also, whatever you will do in life, there will always be downsides.
oh yeah, thank you for
And
adding that.
that is also very important that you highlight that there will always be something that you don't like. And in the end, I'm not saying it's a purely sort of economic accounting decision, sort of positive balance and a negative balance, whatever. But still, there will always be downsides, and are sort of the upsides of things, are they good enough and strong enough and powerful enough to help you overcome the downsides? Because there will
Mhm.
always be downsides. Yeah.
I think, yeah, that is true. There's a, like, the life is not a fairy tale, and even in fairy tales, if you look at it, there's also downsides, and then of course there's the so-called happy ending of a Disney story. But even there is downsides. That's part of that story, and I think it's definitely part of life, even more than in stories. I want to move to that next step, about what have you learned about remote working. And I think with what you described already about the life of your sons, I think you have been already doing a lot of remote working even before COVID. Is a correct assumption, or?
No, not really, actually.
Hmm.
because given the sort of the progressive evolution of the disease of our son, there have been times that my wife could take care of him and so on. So I remember my last big sort of consulting assignment was before the corona. So it ended up in 2019. Then I had to sort of take some time off from consulting because it had been training me, and I needed to re-energize, and I wanted to do something differently. And by accident, I was able to work on a book I'd been working on by then for O'Reilly. And then in about a year later, in 2020, I wanted to go for consulting again, and then Corona. So it was suddenly impossible. So since then, for a few years, I've been working a lot on just classes and workshops. So my experience with remote has a lot to do with that. And in a strange way, so what I went through is a couple of sort of phases probably. So when the corona hit, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? Classes, I believe in in-person classes. I believe in physical connections and warm conversations and side conversations and over breaks and during lunch and whatever. So I had to take time to digest what was happening and see whether I really want to go for online teaching. Um,
Mm.
and I was estranged by a lot of people in our community, Eve, that said, I think too easily, oh, no problem, we'll just go digital and online and whatever and so on. And I was
Mhm.
like, no, it can't be that easy. And so I had to, but that's also because I'm a really slow thinker. I had to really digest that situation. And but I remember I had a class planned in Belgium via a partner, and the corona hit. And in the end, the people that had registered for the class, they indicated that they really wanted the class to happen, also in an
Mhm.
online way. So in a
Okay.
way, after a while, I had to do it anyhow. And then I was a little bit baffled by all of the tools that all of my fellow trainers and whatever brought up. And I was like, oh my God, I looked into those tools. There might be something in my brain. I was like, so complicated, so difficult, so whatever. Oh my God. And then a friend of mine in Belgium pointed me to a very simple tool. It's a Google Jamboard.
Mhm.
I said, Gunther, you have to look into that. It's a digital whiteboard tool, but it's very simple. And that sort of Eve saved my life because I went for Google Jamboard, and then I had this. I have a flip chart here at home, and next to me, I use a physical flip chart in my classes. So I
Mhm.
draw things in front of the camera, like you are here, and I still share my PowerPoint. And I felt like, oh my God, this is at least okay, because all of the tools I would use in an in-person class, I also use now. I have a PowerPoint that I use, but I use it limited in a limited way. I have a flip chart that I can draw things on, and I have a whiteboard tool that I can also use, and I can allow people to use to do exercises and discuss cases. And then at some point of time, I had the strange experience that online classes were working even better than in-person classes.
Mhm.
I can't explain why, but it really was. It was really great. It was still vibrant conversations, dynamic interactions. I allowed people to speak up, and they gave signs via cameras and so on. So in a way, it was really working brilliantly. So that's my experience with remote working is much limited to teaching or facilitating classes, and in the end, it worked really well, and in that sense really useful for me because my own classes I still today 2024 I still do them online. Why? Because it allows me to be at home, not
Mhm.
be away. I can still in the morning do necessary stuff for our kids, and then come here into my home office. Um, and at least the quality of the experience is really at least the same as an in-person class. Plus, the fact that I do it online is because the strange thing is, I don't know how that was for you, but for me, the Corona crisis in the end, business wise, was quite okay. Classes went well. I had good contacts and so on. It was only since the war in Ukraine that sort of my business started going down. Up to that point, Corona, that was okay still, and then it did start going down. So the advantage I now have from teaching online is that I have really small classes, but it's online, so I have people from around Europe at least, and sometimes around the world. So the fact that I do them online allows people from very different places to be in my classes, which is helpful.
And are you still using Google Jamboard nowadays?
I'm afraid I am, but they're taking it out of the market. So
That's why I was asking, indeed,
I
because
know
it's
I hate them. I hate them. I really do. So I by my next series of classes, I've been no procrastination. I've been pushing that away, pushing that forward. I had a series of classes in the spring, and my ambition was by the end of last year that my next series of classes I will need to have a new tool, but I have to get accustomed to that. In the end, yeah, but you know what? Google Jamboard still exists, so I still used it. But before my next series of classes, I am going to have an alternative to that. Yeah, I know.
yeah. I was asking, and you were looking for the whiteboard, and I'm. You were also talking about this book, I think. Meanwhile,
Yeah,
I want to. So this is the O'Reilly book, the
yeah,
97 things every Scrum practitioner should know. Yeah, that's. I
yeah.
think that's also
Yeah,
a
that's the
nice
one
thing.
I worked on in 2019. And as I was not doing consulting, I could spend I can give it full focus, collecting
Mhm.
those things from people, editing, presenting suggestions to those authors as they came in. So in the end, um, we the book was published, I believe, April or May 2020. So after about 8, 9, 10 months of even starting it up, and O'Reilly was
Wow.
like, "Oh my God! Normally we would have estimated this to take 3 years." I was like, "Yeah, but I also gave it my full focus in a way, and I don't like to have things lie around anyhow." Yeah,
But that's well, it impresses me because this is with quotes or tips from multiple
hmm,
people, and that I created a similar kind of book, tips from the agile trenches. For me, I think
okay,
I need to look up again. I think 87 or 89 people. That's it. But knowing, just contacting all these different kind of people, it takes ages to get
yeah.
tips and to get people to reply. And doing that in such a short amount of time, I'm really amazed, because
Yeah, and then
indeed
and
for me,
then
I think 3 years. So.
you've probably gone through that all because some articles you get from some authors are like, oh, wow, cool, this is great, you can publish it like this, and other things that you feel this is just a brain dump.
Mhm.
You haven't spent any time on this at all, and all the whole scala in between. So it was fascinating. Yeah.
Well, I have to say I was rather impressed with most of it, because I didn't do much editing. But what I didn't spend time on, and that I definitely regret, and this is way better in your book, is that I didn't put in that first book, or that book, a link between the sizes, and so there were like things like just a couple of sentences. There's actually one tip in there with one word that I really loved. At first, I was like, "What?" But the more I thought about it, the more I liked. And then others like 3-4 pages. And with your book, it's like, I think, 2 pages. So 1 page is a tip.
Two
Uh,
pages
two
per
pages, huh?
article. Yeah,
And that I think is
yeah,
really a good strategy, because
yeah.
I'm working on one for remote working, and I do the exact same thing, like
Yeah,
going for
yeah, that
two
was that was
pages.
a yeah, there was a sort of instruction made up by the publishing house by O'Reilly that we send out to people, expressing it in sort of the amount of words. But in the end, the amount of words was sort of estimated to take then 2 pages. Yeah.
2 pages. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a smart thing to
And
do.
what I spent a lot of work on is I didn't just wanted to make it sort of a list of 97 articles. I also wanted to create themes and organize them and order them. So that's
That
something that I
usually
spend a
takes a
lot of
lot of
work
work.
in. Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely think that is, but everybody who worked on a book knows what it is to actually spend that
Yeah,
time.
because I'm now currently updating my other book, so my own book. So I don't know if you know this one.
Scrum. Yeah, yeah. I was.
My pocket guide in Scrum. This is the third edition for the past year. So last year in April 2023, I sent a message to the publisher. Oh, I'm thinking about an update of my book, and he said, "Oh, great, please go ahead, do." Uh, that was like a year ago. Then life comes in between, and you have to make money or whatever. And I'm working on it. I'm finalizing the fourth update of my Scrum pocket guide. But again, it will take a couple of months for it to be reviewed again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just writing takes a lot of time. I also say that to people: writing is rewriting. Read it again, go through it, and so on.
But for me, it's the author that should do the work, and I, as a reader, I shouldn't do the work because I sometimes read books where I really feel like this author hasn't spent the time, yeah, thinking it through, and I need to do the work. And it might make me think, or it used to make me think that, oh, that author is really smart, and now I think he's just lazy or she's just lazy. You really have to do the work as an author, I would say. And
Yeah.
talking about books, I want to see, is there a book that you want to talk about? And well, I know that you have a list of books, some multiple kind of things that you wanted to talk about.
Well, I'm currently reading or rereading again. Just really, just was an impulse. Started reading Nietzsche again, so Friedrich Nietzsche.
Hmm.
Because long time ago, when I had the bookshop, and my first bookshop in the
And I
small
think
Australia,
this is the one that you wanted to talk about.
yeah, Beyond the Good and Evil is been the most important one for me. Because I remember having the bookstore in that little place called Wustwezel. There was one of our clients in the bookshop coming to visit us regularly, in general to buy a newspaper or a magazine. I knew he had been studying philosophy a long time ago. He was much older than I was. Um, I knew from people that he also went for a PhD, but didn't finalize it. He did write it, but in the end didn't turn it in and so on. So he didn't achieve his PhD. So I was fascinated by that a lot because by the end of my secondary school, at the age of 18, even when you have to think about what are we now going to study,
Mhm.
so in my secondary school, I was sort of average or pretty good at most things. I was pretty good at languages, sciences, mathematics, and so on. I had this interest in reading and so on, literature. So I had to think about what am I going to do, and that was not a good way to think about it. But the reason I went for engineering, industrial engineering, so this is going to be easy to find a job in later on. That's why I choose for that. So when I had the bookshop, I ended up with the bookshop, by the way, because after my studies, my by then girlfriend, now my wife, got me into reading again because during my studies I had sort of abandoned reading literature, and during the bookshop there was this guy always coming in, strange guy, not very talkative, very silent even, and almost shy, but he was known to be really intelligent. So I remember at some point of time there was a new edition of Nietzsche's most known work called Zarathustra. And there was a new edition of that, and I put it on the counter of the bookshop. And when that guy came in, I pointed out, you see, there's a new edition of that. And he just said, "Oh no, Gunther, if you want to read Nietzsche, go ahead, but don't read that. That's his most famous book. But you know what, his version of the Bible, whatever. You have to read other books." And he gave me a couple of titles. And the first one I read was indeed Beyond Good and Evil. So in Dutch, it's called Voorbij Goed en Kwaad. And the original title in German is Jenseits von Gut und Böse, I believe. Jenseits von Gut und Böse. And I read it, and I've already pointed out that I had a not so really happy youth, let's say. And so at the age, I had a book when I was 26, and reading Beyond Good and Evil of Nietzsche, when he talked about what is moral, what are ethics, and he tried to restore human beings as sometimes nasty, evil people too, with their grounds in biology on the earth and so on, sort of fighting metaphysics and whatever, and explaining how there's no sort of morals built into the world. There are no natural ethics and so on, and those things in a way blew my mind and just helped me put my youth into perspective. At the age of 26, it helped me put my youth into perspective. Evil, nasty things that you had gone through, that I was still angry, frustrated over, whatever. It helped me at least reduce that level of frustration and anger at least a little bit um, by that. And that's why I like that book a lot. I've by then read several of his other books too, and was really impressive. Difficult language, difficult sentences, long sentences with lots of by sentences and so on. Difficult to read, impossible for me to reproduce. That's the difficulty. So I've met people over time, also people that study philosophy. Oh, what do you like about Nietzsche then so much, Gunther? It's so difficult for me to put that on the words, but then when I read it, it makes sense. It's wow, cool. This is incredible. It's because it goes beyond religion. It helps us think, not make ourselves dependent on religion, but look into the here and now, human beings, biological creatures, and then still this sort of ambition of almost creating our own morals or great ethics, and sort of transcending ourselves all the time. In that sense, that when you talk about personal agility, it's reinventing yourself all the time. And that's what is so important for me, and that probably resonates because I've got here in my home office, somewhere in the back, you can't see it on the camera, there's a little wooden box I've got glued against the wall. I've had it for ages, and it's a quote, and I've learned afterwards it's a quote from George Bernard Shaw, which is a famous American novelist, and it says, life is not about finding yourself, life is about creating yourself. And I like that so much because it goes back to Nietzsche. It goes back to creating yourself, inventing yourself, becoming who you think you should be. Don't sit around waiting for things to happen. So, and that is all part of that thing. But Nietzsche has been, in that sense, been really important. And in the year 2000, so we had stopped with the bookshop by then, there was there was 100 years of the death of Nietzsche. Nietzsche died in 1900 after about 10 years in sort of mental sort of asylum, not producing anything, silent, just had totally collapsed into a total mental, whatever, psychological breakdown, never got out of it. 10 years. He had died in 1900, so in 2000, that's how the world works. Anniversaries and celebrations and so on, 100 years of the death of Nietzsche. All of his books were republished. So I bought the complete series. I had most of them I already had, but I like this idea of a brilliant, nice series. And recently I started reading that again from the early works again, and I'm now going to read all of his works, because in the past I've read a number of works, and I'm now going to read all of his works again. It still resonates with me. I started with his first book, which was more about philosophy, not philosophy, about language, about the classic Greeks and so on. But you already sense, he wrote it, I think, at the age of 27, 28. You already sense he's talking about the classic Greeks, classic Greek tragedies. So about theater in a way, you already sense all of his future themes already in a way in that book, which is fascinating. At that age already having all that, and then at some point of time he left his. He had to leave his position as a professor in Basel, in Switzerland, and he became this wanderer that started wandering the world with pains, stomach pains, headaches, and whatever. He had all sorts of funny things. And if you now look at the work he has produced and the depth of it, it's so, for me personally, it's so profound, it's incredible. Because it takes us away from transcending things into metaphysics and hyper worlds and afterworlds and so on, just all bringing it back to human beings. And in that sense, human beings trying to transcend themselves, which is let's say, the true heroism. Yeah.
This story about the again your passion for I was about to say a book, but it's more the writer and everything you learn about that.
Yeah, the
And
thinking,
that
thinking. Yeah,
and that's all from a conversation with a customer that didn't talk much. That's a little bit what I'm
yeah,
hearing.
absolutely.
That's
Yeah, I started reading it. I never even discussed with him in detail that thing. But he also said, because he said, you know what, Gunther, I'm not too much into Nietzsche. He was more into sort of the Wittgenstein thing, so language philosophy and so on, which I still need to read. Tractatus Logico Philosophicus, amazing book, sort of a almost mathematical approach to philosophy.
Mhm.
Uh, so yeah, fascinating. So and that's yeah, it's also a challenge in life, trying to build up a life, earn a living, earn some money, um, help people with their understanding of Scrum in all different ways, and still try to read and have all this interest in so on. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say because you talked about your complex life situation before, and well, when so this is a question I typically ask people, one or a couple of books, and just when I look at the list that you send me, there's a lot of books,
yeah,
and I think if people go to your website, you publish like all the books that you're reading and you're trying to read or that you have already read. It's like I thought I was someone who read a lot, but then I see that list again and like yeah okay I definitely that is a lot of things so if you
yeah.
would
Even my wife wonders about it, Eve. I can assure you.
but
Even my wife.
that I agree that's definitely something I recognize I come from a family of readers I actually my godfather when he died I got his well his five library with 5,000 books and it's amazing how many double books there were in there that he didn't even know that he had double because well yeah he sometimes then borrows it to someone or forgets that he bought it and yeah so there's definitely something I recognize with
I
family.
sometimes consciously buy books again because I like this cover, or it's now a hardcover. I like things in hardcover and so on, and then or I like things, yeah, a series of things. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I definitely recognize that part of it. If you could, from the multiple books that you've shared before with me, if there would be one other book that you wanted to talk about, what would be another book to talk about?
Uh, Another thing that has been really influential at some point of time, it's probably connected to it. It's about Richard Dawkins, The Selfish Gene.
Mhm.
And Richard Dawkins building on the ideas and theories of
And that's the book, I think,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, cool. Yeah, building on the ideas of evolution and Charles Darwin in a way, and it's just expanding the idea even up to the level of genes. So we are full of. We talked about DNA already, huh? And it talked
Mhm.
about the ideas of DNA genes wanting to keep themselves alive in a way, survive. And what I liked about the book again, how he elaborates on this idea that we all know that Darwin never said that it's not survival of the strongest, it's survival of the fittest, the one who's
Mhm.
most fittest to adapt. It's not about power, it's not about strength. And Richard Dawkins explains that idea and he explains beautifully how genes assure themselves of a future by not necessarily competing each other, but by working together, by forming coalitions and so on. And in that sense, making sure that they survive. So this, I like this whole idea of putting at the level of genes in a way that we as human beings are actually just vehicles of our genes that are trying to survive. And our genes do that in all different ways. And it's in general, it has nothing to do with competing or fighting other genes or whatever. It's forming
It's
coalitions, building on each other's help. And I find
and in a way they're all
amazing.
experiments because it's yeah there might be one coalition that is working in one body and in another body it might be something else
Well,
and
it's
rather
amazing that
unpredictable. Eh?
yeah, it's amazing that you bring this up because this is something that helped me when our oldest son was diagnosed with Duchenne, which is a genetic
Mhm.
thing. So it's a genetic thing. So somewhere along his string of DNA, there's somewhere a part that has errors, which is sort of also genetic. Down syndrome is also a genetic thing. So I remember bringing that out, that diagnosis, and talking about it to other people in all openness. And people said, "Oh, not mad or angry or whatever." And I've never really felt like that. Maybe sometimes sad or whatever, but not mad. And
Mhm.
the way that we looked at it was exactly like you said, because he is sort of, let's call it, the victim of the tendency of nature to do experiments.
Exactly.
Because that's what happened. There was a genetic fault. We now know, by the way, because it comes from my wife, his mother. So she, in a way, gave her genetic fault. These.
And
Uh,
is that something, wait, because you mentioned that casually, but is that something that you now discovered through testing, or how did you know this?
Oh, no, we discovered that early on. So when he was diagnosed, so it's either something that happened when he was conceived as a little embryo at sort of the first cell parting already, or it's something that he got from his mother. So his mother, my wife, was tested, and she also carried it already. But we don't know whether it was happened in my wife's body when she was conceived, or whether she had it from her mother, because uh, her mother, the grandmother, is not around, so we can't test it. So we don't know. But in the end, at some point in time, somewhere along the chain, it was an experiment, a genetic experiment of nature that went wrong. That didn't turn out in an improvement of the human species.
But your partner has it, but
Yeah.
I assume she didn't know before you were
No, no,
getting
of course not.
children,
No.
and so in a way that was an experiment that survived because your partner
Yeah.
has none of that, and it only became active. Can I say it that way
Yeah.
in your
Because
son?
it's an X-bound thing, so it's connected to the X
Hmm.
chromosomes or genes. So as you know, women have two X's. So in that sense, my wife had one X that had the fault, and one good X, and then the good X takes over the functions in general of the bad X. But boys have an XY, eh? So the Y comes from me, and the X came from my wife. And by accident, our older son got the bad X from our wife and not the good X. Our son with
Right.
Down had the good X because he doesn't have Duchenne, he has another genetic thing. So yeah, so it's an
And
X bound
that's
thing.
and in a way, does that mean it? Because you say, because I never thought about that, and I don't know very little about the disease. Does that mean also because the women have two X's that there is less chance that they have it because they have a chance
Normally,
that they.
normally, yeah, in theory, only boys would get it. But everything is possible in nature. So there are only, not a lot, but there are also girls or women that have Duchenne, but not a lot. So
Then that
maybe it's
means they
impossible.
have two defect X's. Is that how I should
I don't
see it?
know. I don't think they exactly know how it genetically works. But I know from talking to the professors and the doctors in that, you say, in the end, Gunther, it's nature, and sometimes anything is possible. So theoretically, only boys get it. So a vast majority of people with Duchenne are actually male,
Hmm.
boys or men. But occasionally, there's also a girl or a lady getting it. So when we were pregnant again of our third pregnancy, and we had the embryo, we wanted to have it tested because we wanted to know, is it a boy? Yes, no. If it is a boy, does he then have the disease again? And is it a girl? Yes, no. And if it's a girl, does she carry? Does she also carry it? Because it means that later on we're going to have a difficult discussion with her, saying that if you want to have children, be careful because you might have a bad X. But she was tested already when my wife was still pregnant, and our girl doesn't carry the Duchenne X, so he has two good X's. So no,
Wow.
no difficult conversations. Yeah,
Well, yeah, other difficult conversations because
yeah, but
raising children is other kind of
yeah.
conversation, but that's a
She's she's
different thing.
she's crazy in very very different ways than just the disability. Yeah.
That's a nice way of putting that. Well, thank you for talking so openly. Well, first of all, about these very passionate about these books, but then linking it again to your personal situation. I want to move to that. For me, one of the most interesting questions, especially after such a long and interesting conversation, like, is there a question that you think I should also ask you, and what is the answer?
I can't say. If I really can't say. That was the one question that I looked into it up front. I was like, no, 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 this is a step too far. I can't say. No, I really.
Is there anything that you, yeah, that because you've been already very open and very publicly talking about lots of different things, are there things that you say, well, this is maybe something I do want to share in a different kind of way?
No, currently not. I think we've been really
Well,
open.
but we went already
Really,
very far, so
yeah.
it could be
There's,
okay to
there's,
skip.
there's no secret somewhere that I feel that I should throw in the open right now. No.
But I think we've already been talking for a very long time, so I
Yes.
can imagine that this is really okay. Well, that let's go to that very last question. What is a person that you think I should also ask next? Is there
Yeah.
anyone that you think that I
Yeah.
should invite?
You know that this is in a way a difficult question for me too, Eve, because
Hmm.
your series is called "Who is Agile?"
Hmm.
And when I started a long time ago, back in 2003, first extreme programming, then we wrapped that in Scrum. And you know what? I never even thought, I was never thinking about those things. I didn't have to. We were using Scrum and XP to deliver great system, products, applications, whatever services to clients. So in all of those years, I never had even had to think about the term agile.
Mm.
It's fascinating because it was only in 2011 when I started working with really large organizations, mostly in the Netherlands. And by then, in a way, this agile thing about became like big and thing. It was only by then that I had to think about agile. So I've never, in that's a strange way. So it's strange to be on your series because I've never associated myself with the term agile in the first place. And so suggesting somebody for a series on who is agile. So I immediately thought about two people in my world that I think might be really good to talk to. And one of them I think is an obvious name. I hope in certainly in my world would be Jeff Watts. So
And I think
this,
that's Jeff.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love him. Amazing, nice, gentle, still driven, very clear views. I like him a lot. You've already talked to Tobias Mayer. Otherwise, I would have suggested
Mhm.
Tobias too. Um, but another person that I felt would be worthwhile too would be Bas Vodden.
Wait, before you go into
Yeah, go
to
ahead.
Bas, could you say a little more about why you wanted to invite him? You
Well,
said nice person, and is there? Well, yeah, I don't know. As a kind of introduction, what do you want
I don't
people
know.
to know?
I sense a lot of sort of parallels between myself and Jeff, probably. Jeff has been educated, trained by Ken Schwaber. I've worked with Ken Schwaber. I think not a lot of people can say that. Um, Jeff has been in the Scrum Alliance world. I've been in the Scrum the Talk world, but still we have very similar viewpoints upon Scrum.
Mm.
I like his books, and I admire, probably in the sense of independence. I admire how by the end of last year, Jeff decided to not extend his license as a CST anymore.
Mhm.
I was in touch with him last year, over a year ago, about his ideas and additions, ambition to sort of turn sort of the world of certification upside down and turn it inside out, whatever, with his initiatives. And he's focusing a lot on agile in that sense. I think it is connected to who is agile, maybe more than I am. Um, because he's working with these agile mastery pathways and product mastery pathways and so build on his books, Team Mastery and so on. I admire his courage and determination to go this way. he's cut off his ties with his license and so on, really going for his own idea. It's probably less Scrum and more into building on the idea of Agile and the need for Agile. So in that sense, with his agile mastery pathways and so on, the way he wants to connect with people over longer term. So not just sort of one point, 2 days contact with people, but keeping that up and guiding people. I think would be fascinating to hear his viewpoints on what you call agile and why are you approaching it in this way with this sort of uh, trainings.
Yeah, and definitely like, and especially his books, the different mastery books, both
Yeah.
the Scrum Master product and Team Mastery books is really wonderful. Yeah, kind of, I would almost say series of books about the different ways of. Yeah, I really like him a lot. So then you introduced that second person. This is Bas Vodde. Why do you want to invite Bas?
Because I have a really one really fond memory of Bas. I remember so I started working with Ken in 2013. I had been so actively with my own company working with them. Before that, I've worked with him for about 1 year and a half, 2 years, as as a principal consultant at Capgemini, where I could ask for his advice and so on. We've been in touch a couple of times, and then I started working with Ken and Scrum Talk, and I've noticed how many people were like surprised. Where does this guy come from? This Gunther guy, this Belgian guy, where does he come from? What does he pop up? How is he now suddenly working with Ken? And why do we see him popping up all over the place? And I remember having a conversation in Amsterdam with Bas. By then, Bas was living in Singapore still, and he was paying a visit to the Netherlands. And he said, "Good, I really want to have a talk with you." And so I went to Amsterdam, and we sat in the bar of a hotel for an afternoon, and it was a beautiful conversation. We so aligned around Scrum, ideas about Scrum, what it is not, all of the aspects and so on. That was so brilliant. I had never met him, but I totally connected with him just in terms of Scrum. By then, they were trying to build the less into a company. I believe that was the early days.
Yeah, 2010, 11, that was
Yeah.
the first couple of books of
Yeah.
something that turned into less, I would say.
And I learned from Bas by then, and I like that inside information that he and Craig had been trying to. They had been approaching both the Scrum Alliance as well as Scrum the Talk by then, which I didn't know by then, to help them adopt less as a scaled version of Scrum or a framework to help organizations scale Scrum. Both the Scrum Alliance, it seems, as well as Scrum Talk had been saying no, and that's why Bas and Craig in the end turned it into a company of themselves, because they had been trying to work with an existing organization, so they were forced to. And those conversations were like really beautiful. I've never really actually spoken to Bas. I like what he does, but I totally buy into the way he looks at Scrum. And he's not and that is in a way beautiful. He's not the most visible guy. He's on social media and so on. And in a way I appreciate that. In the meantime, he's moved back to the Netherlands. So I like that sense of humility that I think he has. When he speaks out on social media, I like it's always clear. And the last time I was sort of a little bit connected to Bas was in 2020 when there was a new version of the Scrum Guide being developed. And I remember I had ideas about what it should be. Had been making sure that the right people knew about it. And at some point of time, Bas, Tobias, you've talked to Tobias and myself, our feedback was requested by Ken about a new Scrum Guide. What should it be? And again, in the answers that the three of us gave, certainly I felt again that sort of deep connection with Bas about what it should be, how Scrum should be presented, and so on. And I think we both have the same feelings about the end result in which we were not involved. Um, and I recently saw a post of him again. So his clear opinions, I think, very straightforward, very Dutch in that sense. You know, Eve, very direct people.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
he must have some good, clear opinions to share.
I definitely I'm a big fan of Bas ever since I first encountered him. Yeah, when I was kind of surprised that when I've loved the two books. I can't come up with the right names now, but the two books that he wrote with
Yeah,
Greg, that was the pre-work of what
yeah,
turns out to be less. That I've used it a lot back in 2010 when they came out. 2010 used it a lot there, and I still remember that later on when indeed then when we had that other large scaling framework that then like okay, they should have made it into another scaling thing, and I was really happy when I saw then the movement to less,
yeah.
because
And
it
I
made
think one
sense.
of their books is right behind you somewhere. I think no, the
There
brown
is
one. No?
this
Yeah,
indeed. The other one should be there somewhere as well, but scaling lean and agile development is indeed.
yeah,
I have a couple of versions of this because I really love that one, both this and the accompanying book, I would say, and the lean, the less book somewhere is somewhere there as well. But yeah, I really love these books, and they have influenced a lot of me. Wow, already 14 years ago. So yeah, definitely something that I really liked. So thank you for inviting Bas. He was on my list, waiting to be invited. So I'm really happy that someone now did
cool.
invite him. So that's really cool. Well, like I said earlier on, we talked for a very long time.
It's cool.
It's I really I loved this conversation. I was really looking forward, and it gave me everything I wanted. For the people, if they want to contact you, what would be a good way to contact you?
I did look up my website. It's myname.com. There's a contact thing, or they can look me up on LinkedIn.
I think
Um,
that's the LinkedIn page because that's
yeah,
a little bit more complex to find, indeed, I would say.
yeah, yeah. And then guntherverheyen.com, somewhere there's a contact thing. They will find my email address. There's a contact form, and even my email address. So yeah,
And I think you were rather, I wouldn't say easy, but it's possible to contact you, and
yeah,
approachable. That was the word I was saying, considering your fame or everything that you said before. Being independent, you try to stay in contact with the people. So yeah,
yeah.
it's um, it's been, like I said, a really wonderful conversation. So thank you very much for spending this evening with me, I would say, and I hope we see each other again at some place somewhere
Cool.
in the near future.
Thank you for the invitation, Yves, and my good luck publishing this. It's a long one. It's crazy.
It's
Okay,
it's
crazy.
a long
Must
one.
must have been a great conversation.
For me, it's this was like I really loved this conversation, and well, I do think this one, like I said in the intro when we talked pre the conversation, uh, I try to avoid too much editing, and I don't think I need to do any editing. So in that
No,
sense, it's mostly the computer that will do the work, and that's it. And then me, when I publish it, indeed having to listen to where are the questions so that people can go find the exact questions at some point. So. I
yeah.
will definitely listen a couple of times to this before it's getting published. But anyway, I really sincerely thank you because it's been
Thank
a
you.
wonderful conversation.
Okay.
And I
Cool.
send you off to your family because by now they might be thinking, why is that taking so long?
Yeah, I've warned them up front. Yeah.
So, but
Okay.
that is
Cool.
that's why I'm asking, is there a time limit so we can look
No.
into that? But well, I would
Okay.
say
Wonderful.
thank you
Thank you
very much.
very much, Yves, and see you
Thank you
around
for
somewhere.
watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.